Y'all already know what it is. Now it's a vibrate. We got Bridge of Rye in the building. We taking them to the bridge. Taking them to the bridge.
Yeah, just
But
just to it, not across it.
wait, what's that?
Just to it, not across it.
So, you know what I'm saying? Without further ado, you know what I'm saying? We're gonna tap in. I just put like just an open vibe, but I'll give a title later, you know what I'm saying? Gonna kind of tap into some of the vibes of what I've been speaking on the trickster energy, uh issue energy. But I'ma just let Bridge do his thing and I'ma flow from there, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, ignore the weird lighting. I can't really get like I can't really get the greatest lighting in here,
you
but
good.
um yeah, yeah. To start, what were we going on our messages? We were saying
I brought up
yeah,
my recent, so like watching Yu-Gi-Oh, and uh it was a connection. Well, basically I was watching Yu-Gi-Oh, and Bakura brought up a part where he was like, "Man, it's tough to beat Pegasus, because he created the game and he's in essence like, the god of the game, because he created it." And it brought me to a space of like, all right, creating the game, imagination, the connection with the fifth house and childhood, and creativity and the imagination. You know what I'm saying? And and I just recently did a video on that. But yeah, that was that was a connection
yeah.
point.
Um, basically, he didn't really create the game. He just, even though it says that, he discovered it. You know what I'm saying? So like,
Gotcha, gotcha.
anytime someone discovers Pandora's box, like they're gonna think they created it, but they discovered it. And Pandora's box is like we're quantum 4D supercomputer type thing, right? So like that's like a whole virtual
Gotcha.
space inside of that, right? Now, um, if you think about like kind of like what I was saying before, I was saying I mentioned that movie called Cool
Hmm.
World, um, which most people probably haven't seen, but Space Jam is like a pretty good example how like they go into that space where I guess they're like jammed in, but they go into that space, right?
Right.
Like the cartoon space, right? Because like Pegasus uses the toon cards, right? The cartoon cards.
Yep, yep. And the whole imagination thing, and also got the little eye, to read
But if you
minds and
think about it,
stuff.
he didn't create them though, because the way it works is he from like he takes puts it in the book and the book closes, and it like which is his
Right.
imagination, right? And it looks like Disney World and all that type of you know what I'm saying? It closes and then it reopens and then has this cartoon version. So he didn't create it; he just discovered how to like. So he's reinventing it. So that's like you were saying, Alice in Wonderland, Space Jam, all that. The Cool World, right? Or the movie
Gotcha.
Son of the Mask. If anyone's seen that, not the first Mask movie, but Son of the Mask. And like we were saying before, the Mask, that's literally Loki, which is Eshu type energy, right? That's literally the mask is literally Loki's mask, and it's Loki trying to find a vessel to reincarnate. That's what the movie The Mask.
Gotcha.
As a child, right? And then, or I don't think it's Jim Carrey. I think it's a different guy. But he has a dog, and he has like a what's it called? Yeah, he's married. He has a wife. He has a dog, and then he has a baby, right? And then basically he finds the mask, and then the baby wears the mask. But what happens is Um, so he's basically trying to save the baby because it's when he wears the mask, it turns him from a baby to like a full adult, and like how you're saying with the childhood vibes, right?
All right, all right. And it's new to me, so I'm again, I haven't watched the second Mass, so
Now the main guy, he's a writer, and he's trying to make a cartoon. I'm pretty sure, and he's selling it to a company, and they're trying to put the cartoon out, which is just clearly all on theme, right? So he's trying to make like like a comic strip type like that type of what I mean, like Garfield type. Um,
gotcha, gotcha.
I forget. I think it's just about like him at home with his dog, kind of like Garfield, and like his son or his child, right? but the child got the mask and he's doing a bunch of crazy stuff, and then Loki's trying to reincarnate through him. Odin shows up and then tells Loki to fix the problem. Loki's in the movie, like it's not just um
All right, all right. And
yeah.
and when you brought it up though, I thought of like how the mask. I don't know if it's like that in the second movie, but in the first movie, you know, the mask is green and he wears a yellow suit, and so the whole yellow and green, you know what I'm saying, energy. Because you know, paying attention to the symbols is
There's the
part of it.
mask. I think I'm pretty sure when the mask gets put on, it's Jim Carrey still. Like it's still the same. Still the same. It's the same mask.
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah. It's still the same mask. It's just different people who are dealing with it in New York or something. But the point of that is now cool guy that movie. He's also a writer, and then he gets pulled into like a or not cool guy, sorry, Cool World. He gets pulled in. It's Brad Pitt. It's like from the '90s, but he gets I think it's '99 or '98 or something like that. But he gets pulled into like the world he wrote or the comic world he wrote, right? And
Got
yeah, that's like a really good example of a lot of stuff, shadow work and a lot of that, and that goes into like a whole art movies, kind of like Green Hornet. If you've seen like Kick Ass and like um, kind of like Batman, Gotham type vibes. I don't know. It goes into a whole archetype of uh, that black and white Spider-Man from the one Spider-Man. But anyways, that's a whole
all right.
archetype of film and stuff like that as well. So basically what I'm trying to get at is like the SU energy kind of splits up into a lot of different places because what it does is it kind of like, and this is not the original SU energy. It's like this is like a this is like this is like being transmitted through.
So so in other words, it's like somebody's trying to duplicate the issue energy. You know what I'm saying? Is what you're
Yeah,
got you.
yeah. That was one of the first energies I got. Like, so this goes into Christ because Ishu Yeshua. You know what I'm trying to say? Like
Right.
Yeshua Yeshua means my savior. But then if you take off the ua, it's just Yasha, which just means savior. And then if you hear they say in Hebrew it was wise, but no, they were eyes, so it's more like Aisha. And then when you get into the Aisha, it's actually then you hear the Eshu Aisha. You know what I'm saying? Um,
Got you.
the main difference is in West Africa they use more like the lower consonants in East Africa. You know what I'm saying?
All right. Yeah, because what I just
Because
shared.
the word
Oh,
the word
what you said? I couldn't hear.
I was saying that word Yasha I was going into that means savior that comes from the Sabian language, which is like pretty much the Ge'ez language. It comes from the Sabian language, so it's like from our language, literally. But
All
yeah,
right.
so like yeah,
Because I was just gonna say in my most one of my recent videos, I just spoke on also understanding like the trickster energy and what it's meant to teach in the sense of like with the whole aspect of you know, the archetype being called a trickster because it's presented as a savior, but then also presented as the scapegoat. And I was like, the whole trick is, and speaking of, again, I brought up trick or treat because it's Halloween, and no coincidence that, what I'm saying, a trickster archetype, hey, put out the candy. Like, it's basically like a child energy. But long story short, like the trick is uh to not be caught up in blaming somebody else for your experience and then also not looking for an external savior. So literally, like, the trick is to not turn the trickster into a scapegoat and be like, oh, it was because of the devil or because of this, person or whatever. And then also though, to not be sitting around waiting for, oh, the one or just one person to save us all. It's like it is about having like a spiritual accountability, you know what I'm saying, for your own karmic experience and transmuting these energies yourself. But
no, I fully agree. I feel like if you say Aisha instead of Yasha, that I just takes you don't have to say any of it. But I'm saying if you take the I, that just means you take accountability. Exactly. Like it's a different perspective. That's what I mean. The languages are two different systems that get created.
right.
How you even read the same like it's not just the Bible. It's like think about it like this. It's like people on these two different systems, no matter what they read and what they look at, like in that separation point of view you said, or in that other point of view where you bring it all together,
Right.
right? Um, so that's kind of why I just use certain things like the Bible and like like comic like popular things because it's like a easy way to kind of like show that perspective shift, right? Between the two. But yeah, I fully agree on that. Uh, yeah, the
Yeah.
thing I was gonna say about that, the Judas energy is what I thought was the other cloned Eshu energy. We're talking about the cloned energy. So when you want to be like, Christ, and then you sold him out and like all that type of stuff,
Mm.
right? That to me was the cloned Eshu energy. So the difference was the location. So Christ was born in Judea or in Bethlehem or wherever it might be, and then they say Judas is born in which is the twin cities, aka Sodom and Gomorrah, which is in the land of Moab. So that's what Judas Iscariot means.
All right, and so Judas was born in Sodom and Gomorrah, because what just came to me is also
That's exactly,
the
and that's why his name is Judas.
the astrological connection. Matter of fact, when you think about Judas, and I think about the Jesta Nakshatra, and that goes into like Indra, in Hindu mythology, and basically him trying to make sure that other spiritual sages don't be as spiritual as him. So again, kind of like a somewhat like competition, again, like the Judas Jesus thing. But then also Judas is said to be connected, like, because when we talk about the 12 disciples or the 12 zodiac signs, and like the kiss on the cheek was almost like a sting, from the scorpion, in connection with the actual like anatomy or astronomy of like the sun movement. You know what I'm saying? It's like the sun takes the kiss of death around this time, like October, when we're in Scorpio season, right before it goes into, the winter time. But I digress.
Makes actually perfect sense. Yeah, I didn't think about
You
that.
know.
The Scorpio part and the timing. Um, yeah. So from there, that's a good point. It
I
just
didn't
made me
mean
think about
to.
a bunch. No, no, you're good. It didn't throw me off. It just made me think about a bunch of other stuff too. um, like like the movie Scorpion King and stuff like that. It just connected with a bunch of other stuff. But
All right, gotcha, gotcha, gotcha.
what we are talking about before with like the like what we were talking about before we went live. Um, the whole things with the virtual aspect and all that. Basically, like reason why he was in Sodom and Gomorrah, but he was a Judean, but didn't have the same internal aspect, like because he was from a different motherland. He had the same father, but different motherland, if you want to put it like that.
Gotcha.
Because of that, like they have different blood types. You know what I'm trying to say?
Like,
Genetics, like
I'm talking about
different.
now we still on the Judas and all right, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So they were both from two different motherlands, but they were both Judeans, right? Because of their father, right? Because like
Gotcha.
King Solomon had a lot of right,
You said King
a lot of
Solomon what?
had a lot of wives.
Yeah, 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 yeah. A lot of concubines, so to speak.
But one got the ark. Basically, they're Sheba and Menelik, right? Or Sheba and Solomon, Menelik, King David, like the ark of the covenant, and that's going into like Ethiopia side of things, Lalibela, all that type of stuff. But on the other side of it, when you go to the land of Moab, Sodom and Gomorrah, and all that with the Judean side there, they might have the patrilineal lineage, but they don't have the same matrilineal lineage. So this goes into what we were talking about before with the different genetics, right? Um,
Hmm.
that's exactly what that is. But anyways, so now with those two differences, this is where you got the portaling the energy. You know what I'm trying to say? Like
Uh, like you said, pulling one energy into the virtual world, and using it to tap in another place, as I'm somewhat saying it.
yeah, basically like what these artificial suns and all that type of stuff is like pretty much the ability to pull solar energy from I should grab this. Basically pull solar energy from different sources, including the Earth, and put that into the electromagnetic spectrum. So, like we were saying before, like the sun is dealing with photovoltaic energy, which is like it produces it produces magnetic um, it produces basically like a magnetic energy that we can use with other. I'm gonna plug something in, so
You good? You good?
make sure the phone doesn't die.
I had to do the same thing. I'm making sure I'm plugged in.
Oh wait, to make sure this is on too.
Matter of fact, let me see if the chat.
There we go. Okay, so long story short, it's just about pulling soul energy and turning it into like a form of spiritual energy, which gets digested differently, like basically through the electromagnetic system. So, like we are kind of saying before, with the RFID system and like this kind of worldwide type of because the RFID, if people don't know, like with that ID, it basically emits an electromagnetic signal. So, like if you walk to an airport and you're going to the terminal, they can see people before they get to the terminal, so they screen them before they get there and decide how they like what they're going to do with them before they even go up there.
You said this is the acronym. You said RFID.
Yeah, I think it means what is it? Real what is it? Finger? I don't even remember what it is. Identification. I don't even remember.
You
Real.
good? You good? I wanted to make sure we had the letters right. Look, that's what the research is for. Look, it could go.
Yeah. Basically, it just scans binary data. So um, it takes our facial data from like technology, from like cameras and all that type of stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, it takes our fingerprint. That's why on the basically what happened was they implemented this when they released the iPhone 6. So you know when they put the iPhone 6 and then they came out with the iPhone 6S?
All right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Matter of fact, because I think I was still dealing with iPhone around that time.
Yeah. So the 6S, what it had was a different type of SIM card. That SIM card actually was like a earlier type of the like a prototype, but it wasn't the RFID. It was actually like a better type of SIM card. But then what they did is when they brought out the 5G towers and all that, they made it so that if you still have those SIM cards from that time period,
Hmm.
they basically try to make it so that you can't even use those SIM cards anymore. Like if you try to use it on your phone, they won't function even though they're supposed to function.
Gotcha,
So they
gotcha.
work differently. So that one was the one that had like how they have this wireless what do you call it? Like the wireless charging. Like there's just a lot of different types of technology that was connected with the 6S. But what happened was, and this was 2015, 2016. That's why a lot of different things kind of went down. But that's kind of like a whole different conversation. But long story short, there's something called the Real ID Act, and essentially this is where like the whole Agenda 21, Agenda 20 came from. If people don't know, but it was essentially a system where it was supposed to come out in October of I think 2021 or something like that, where basically every type of ID, where passports, driver's license, all that, they have a chip in it that emits an electromagnetic signal. And like I said, like people within a certain radius, like cops and different things like that, they can read that signal. So it's like they don't have to scan your license plate. They can, when you're going up, like I said, to an airport terminal, they can scan you. They can pre-screen you, right?
But,
This
like
is why
from a distance.
from a distance, yeah. So this is why they want people to work from home and all that type of stuff because what they do is they use the virtual. They're using a virtual space, so they have like virtual. This is why you're seeing all these crazy news stories that don't even really like they just seem kind of fake. And there's also like they have like they have like actual court screenings, all this stuff on YouTube, and they're not like real. They're like virtual. It's literally virtual. It's crazy, but it's like a way to create an indictment on a person. Like it's kind of like voodoo, but through
Through virtual reality. It's like a virtual reality puppet in essence. Cause I mean that's what like a voodoo doll puppet.
this goes into chat gpt, and this goes into people now like screening people and creating profiles or identities of people so they can basically entrap them into different situations um,
All
using
right.
so it's like a real crazy type of technology. But basically it was so that any type of actual official government ID has this has that in that and then it went into something called like the environmental sustainability program, where, like for example, I read the one for my city and for my province like way back, and they wanted by 2030 they wanted the actual plan within the budget and everything is to have like it started with like like McDonald's putting those things that you just order from, you know what I'm saying, where you don't have to go to a person, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Got you.
yeah, there is a McDonald's that doesn't even have anyone in the back too. There is one. It's I forget where in America, but there's one. I don't know if it's like Kentucky or something, but they have a McDonald's where there's no one. There's just one person managing, and that's the
That's
person.
it. Right, right.
But yeah, it starts with that. Essentially, like trains without drivers, buses without drivers because they're on a constant route, right? Buses and trains without drivers. And this is part of my city's plan by 2030. This is what I read 5 years ago on the official just city website. Uh, so that is that's a whole system, and that's going into this virtual world. And now this is going into now, like I said, when you have an identification like with who you are, this goes into your soul. You know what I'm trying to say? So
Hmm.
when we're going to the whole straw man thing and like the whole parasite thing and all that, um, yeah, when we're going into all that, this goes into yeah, certain stuff I'm not going to talk, but
Oh yeah,
it goes into basically, like I
I
said,
know. I was
huh?
gonna say, yeah, do your thing. For me, look, as long as when we bringing up things, like as long uh as we bring up certain stuff as far as like with with the government or this and that, I'm always like, as long as we bring up some type of solution as well, like like we could go as deep, you know what I'm saying?
I'm not, I'm not really explaining it like a like. Well, the best thing is to understand what that is, and then what like is natural, and then just be able to separate yourself from that, and then be able to operate within like within that world without it like letting in your space, so that when you operate in that world, it doesn't really like affect you as much. You know what I'm trying to say? Like more so just
Right,
using that
right.
space more for like business. You know what I'm saying? Um, but it kind of makes it the main problem I have with that. This is like the real main problem I don't have with virtual reality is it makes it difficult for people to develop astrally. Like it makes it really difficult for people like children, for example. Like it makes it difficult for the pineal gland. Like it makes it difficult for them to develop their because when they're into like the iPad and the TV screen so heavy, like they're going into the virtual space and their consciousness is being pulled into there, and they're not necessarily in the astral where they're building their imagination anymore, and it creates health problems. And that's the main problem I have with the virtual.
I always felt like that too. Like, I'm one of those people that's like, hey, you know, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, like, oh, technology is all bad. But I'm definitely like, I always use just a simple calculator analogy. It's like, if you use a calculator too much, you won't be able to do math in your head, on your own. You know what I'm saying? So you don't want to use a calculator too much, aka in this case, you don't want to be dependent on external technology for your imagination more than you're dependent on your own technology, because technology is based off of the technology of, our, you could say, our spiritual and physical being. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have these abilities to tap into, again, like we got our own little VR within our, within ourselves, because I feel like that's also, again, like not being on the extreme about it, but it's definitely like, like how much you playing on the computer, or like wearing like, little glasses to protect yourself, or, making sure that you fast or kind of go outside a lot, you know what I'm saying? Not always around Wi-Fi.
Like,
I
like,
do
like what?
feel like,
Sorry. Just what I meant about that though is like with children, like it's they still have to have the ability to take time to develop power. You know what I'm saying? Like they still have to develop the ability to process certain things. So it's like, or like the way to like interpret the processing. You know what I'm saying?
right,
So like when their consciousness gets too trapped in that virtual space when they're young, when they get older, they have to back process what that was because they have parts of their energy still trapped there. But what people don't realize is that's also a part of banking, and that's like a way like to maliciously take an investment. So think about like if you're thinking about certain shit and then you're like, hey, let me go to Google to go figure out something about it, right? Versus if you were to go outside and just build what it was. Now, you put your consciousness into building that, you're going to start developing things and start getting more intelligent. But if you put it into Google, what happens is you search it, it goes into your mind, and you feel like you did it. And a lot of times, these because children, a lot when they're younger, they're going to be searching
Hmm.
for things, like, and they might not have the ability to do what they want to do right there. But when they do that, it puts that part of their consciousness there, and then it creates like this artificial, like I said, virtual space, like reality where, or a person, if you want to put it like that, where like in the future that idea that that person has actually develops in that space, and then it gets taken by another person or entity, where then it becomes a product and it becomes sold, and it almost feels like an organ missing. Like it actually feels terrible to that person when they develop. So when they're trying to develop, it has like they're having like missing pieces to them because of the virtual space. And children, like, and that's what I was trying to get at. Like that's the only problem I have with children getting into it, because they don't really develop the process where they have the conscious standing where they can be like, yeah, I'm against this, because like it traps that part before they process anything. You know what
Man,
I'm saying?
I
Like it just
look, as you say that, I'm thinking about, like, again, like the first 7 years of development and how important that is to the subconscious. So that aligns, and also, like, I think when I hear the word children, I also think about the analogy that, you know when you're fresh upon your awakening, even if you're not a child, when you're new to, spiritual practices, and new to kind of tapping into your inner energy and inner vision and stuff like that, I feel like that part of your process is like childhood, in so many ways. And speaking of the hood, because it's initiation, you're initiating through your childhood, you know, and having to learn these things. So that resonates.
but yeah, exactly. And on top of that, it can now in that virtual space where you have that like idea of things growing,
Mhm.
things can be implemented in that now, where you start doing other shit that you shouldn't be doing. You know what I'm saying? But now when you're talking about the solution aspect, I didn't really want to talk about this too much yet, because like I have like a whole way I'm going to build up onto it on my channel.
Do
But
do your
um,
thing. Do your thing.
basically there is a way to like um basically like what I'll do is I'm gonna put out a video. I already have it done. It's like uploaded and shit, but it's just me doing a movie review. I think I did Holes or something like that. But have you seen the movie Holes?
Holes.
Yeah,
No, well, I felt like I might have watched that it's an older movie.
yeah. It was Shia LaBeouf, like the guy from Even Steven.
All right, I ain't watched it. Like, put it like this. I don't remember it, so I would have to watch it again. You know what I'm saying, to get whatever it is.
I didn't either. I had to rewatch it too, because yeah, I watched it way back. But I'm gonna put that out, and like what I did is I did the movie, like I reviewed it backwards. So I was gonna put you onto this later, but might as well just say it now. So because I'm used on different shows and movies and stuff like that too, but I'm sure you be on that too. So like what I be doing is like I watch things forwards, but I also watch it backwards.
So how you watch it backwards? Run it, run it.
I've watched Yu-Gi-Oh backwards. For I watched everything I've seen forward. I've watched it backwards.
So, in other words, all right. So, like, stuff that has episodes, like, you'll start at the last episode and then work your way to the first episode. Is what you're saying?
That too, but I mean start at the end of the episode and watch it in reverse. But I did that too.
All right. Wait. So, hold on. What you mean? Like, you make it rewind? Like,
Let's say this video was posted right now,
you say? Say that again.
right? Let's say this video was posted right now. I would start at the end of the video and watch it backwards.
And I'm saying, so a reason why I'm asking, because I'm like, I don't know, like, because, say for instance, YouTube don't have like a rewind button. So how you
It
watch it
doesn't come with that.
backwards?
I usually don't watch things on YouTube, but I'll just like skip through it backwards. You could just like I'll watch it forwards and backwards. Like it depends what order. I might watch it backwards, then forwards, and then back again. I might watch it forwards, and then I'll just like hold the thing, hover it backwards, so like I just can see all like the little pictures because I can just remember what happened. Watch it backwards. That's an easy way.
Gotcha.
I just either
Gotcha.
pause it, process it, but there's like a way you can do all that. So with movies, okay, when you get a book, right? What do you have to do? You have to turn to the back of the book to read what the book's about, right?
You say turn to the back of the book. So what?
You can read what the book is about, right?
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah. The index or the table of content.
Well, that's at the beginning, the table of contents. Yeah, but the summary of the book, they always put that summary on the back, right, where you just read what it's about. So like,
I get what you're saying.
it's
Yeah, yeah.
supposed you're supposed to read things backwards to forwards. This is what I was trying to say. Jesus came after, or sorry, he came before Aaron. That's what I was trying to explain. Jesus is like the Bible. They're not reading it properly. Like, think about it.
Hmm.
Aaron had a scout named Joshua or Joshua. So that means Joshua came before him. So that means Jesus was first. And then when he said, I'm going to slay people by the sword, he was killing people. And then Aaron, when he created the Old Testament, which is actually the real Testament, they went back to not eating meat and all the vegan stuff. That was the real way of doing. They basically, and then when it says Jesus is the redemption of Adam, they had to go back in time to Adam, and that's why they made that movie called The Adam Project, which was Adam time traveling to his kid self, which is tying Jesus and Adam and shit. That's what they were talking about. But for them, they're trying to do this weird. I'm not even gonna get into all that, but I already spent like a year or two on my channel talking about all that.
And you semi talked about. I know we kind of talked about, and I made like a little clip about when you was talking about like the whole Adam and Jesus, and it's the same being going through a process of
Yeah, because his actual name is Yahshua Yahshua Moshiach de Adenenu, which means Yahshua the Messiah, the redemption of Adam. And the word Messiah is coming from Moses, which is Moses and Aaron, right? And
right,
Adam,
right.
so Jesus, Moses, Adam, Moses, Aaron, kind of probably one thing, kind of how you see like Yugi and Big Yugi, you know what I'm saying? But
And that
anyways,
and that connects with because somebody was asking me how I connect like the Toth and Papa Legba energy, and that all, because again, Ishu or Papa Legba is also kind of like a Christ energy and also like a Moses or messenger energy, so
with
it
the
all.
thing and the cross. That's where I was going to go with the Judas thing and the cross and how he received 30 pieces of silver. This is going into the cross is going into the tree of death, which was like a worm thing that literally ate Christ. It like ate him and made a clone. And then, because you know, I said like the issue was they're not able to produce the metals and all that type of shit, right? Because they're
Mhm.
dealing with the higher chakras. So this was the ability to produce silver because of the lack of silver in the higher chakras, so that they can produce gold to an extent. But this goes into like the Death Star and long story short, it's also like a time traveling type thing too. So like shit in the past is tied to shit in the future, and it's kind of I don't know. It's like that's like a whole thing, and it's
Right, right.
like in Dragon Ball. For example, you know they have Dragon Ball Z. That Z stands for completing like the beginning and end. That just means like they're at their complete state. You know what I'm saying? Like where the beginning and end is um like finalized.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I kind of forgot where we were going with that.
uh Matter of fact, yeah, I know we was just still kind of breaking down like the Judas. You was running it on the Judas Jesus connection.
Yeah, but before that, I just brought that up as an example for something else. But
Yeah,
that yeah,
right, right,
that's what I
right.
got. But yeah, that was going. I think it had to do with the virtual space. Um,
Oh, and we
and
was talking about like, so like watching movies backwards, like
oh right, thank you, thank you. That's what. So at that point, that's when we got that other grid that started getting created. So what happened was, you know, how they say like Hebrew is like German, like they say it's like it's just backwards and stuff, right? Or English is Hebrew backwards. You know, people say that, right?
hmm
Okay, well, if Hebrew is English backwards, that means if you're on the English calendar, if you want to put it like that, end of things, and if you're at the Hebrew calendar, you're at the beginning of like, you know what I'm trying to say? Like it puts like the language is also you know how letters are associated with numbers, like astrology
right.
is associated with letters and it's associated with words and scripts and all that type of stuff. So when I say I read everything backwards, Satanists got that shit from because Satanists flip things and all that type of shit. But they got that from Kabbalists, which they say they got it from Sufis, but that still came from like East Africa and all that shit. Still, either way, in Egypt
Gotcha,
and
gotcha.
I'm trying to say, in East Africa at that time, still the people in West in the East at that time. Long story short, but yeah, Freddy versus Jason. That's what I'm trying to say. That's a perfect example. Jason backwards. Think about it. Just think about all these movies backwards. This is entirely different. They're entirely different stories. So when you watch like the Western comic world backwards, you get like the other side of things, which is like the manga Japanese, like all the other stuff.
I thought about manga. I thought about the fact that you read Hebrew from right to left, and manga from like the what we call the back of the book. But like manga kind of goes like the same way. But continue, bro. You cooking?
Another example, the Sabian language is a bidirectional language, right? So the Sabian language, if people don't know, they say it comes before get is. They say, but they don't know if it comes before the get is. They don't know if like both of them come from a. But long story short, they're like almost like the same language. But that's where like Arabic came from the Sabian language with a little other influences and stuff throughout time, obviously. But this is where the
All right.
Old Arabic came from. So in that language, it's bidirectional. Now, what they say is like if you read sentence back. Actually, the word you can just read the word backwards too, and this creates a like a like a symmetry effect where you're able to take the characters and turn it into sacred geometry and invert it into like a holographic effect where you can see what they're supposed to actually be, which turns it into a hieroglyphic. It creates a hieroglyphic. Like these, when you put them together, they create actual hieroglyphics and stuff. It's just more advanced. The hieroglyphic is like kindergarten stuff where you teach people picture books, and then when you use the characters, they create like advanced hieroglyphics, which is like a different level. But yeah, you can read the words backwards and forwards. So, for example, Yasha forwards is Y S or YSH. Now, the other way is SY or Shai or Sha. You know what I'm saying? Or Ashi or something like that. So you can read things
Gotcha.
backwards and
Gotcha. All
forwards. Long
right,
story short.
man. Look,
Now with Kabbalah, you can ciphers where you can rearrange things into different ways, and that's when you go into kabbalistic aspects of things. But that's going into actually a Kemetic form of things. Now, um, when they talk, yeah, that's like a whole thing in itself. But um,
I gotta make note of that because as you're saying it, I'm listening to you as you go, but I'm like, bro, I gotta kind of sit and meditate on the whole, watching things backwards, forwards, and like I'm like, ooh, you just hit me with one, you know what I'm saying? So,
like I plan on doing a lot with it, but I want to share that with you because I know like you be on some other stuff too, so I'm sure you can add that to the stuff you're
man,
doing.
greatly appreciate it, man. I already told you, man, you be coming through with it, man. Look, that's why I be like, bro, look, I'm gonna let you cook, bro. I'm gonna let you do your thing.
Yeah, I want to actually like do some reviews and like get like a whole catalog set up first before I kind of share that publicly. But it's all right. So like, because I think it's gonna be better to have people kind of look into that a little so they can like get an understanding of um what that is. So what's a good example that we can do that with? How about like Space Jam? Let's try with Space Jam, right? Or Alice in Wonderland. The movie ends with them. If the beginning is the end in this case, right? So it starts with her meeting the Wizard of Oz, basically, and realizing the shit is fake, and then it ends with her leaving Wonderland and going to the real world and going to her wedding. You know what I'm trying to say? If you think about Space Jam, yeah,
Wait, because I'm about to say, it sound like you said Alice in Wonderland or Wizard of Oz. Are you talking about like both of them one and the same, or what you just said?
basically they're one and the same, is what I'm saying. Cinderella, all
Right,
three, same thing.
right, 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 right.
Sleeping Beauty, right? Same thing. So like all now, if because what it does is it goes into their world. That's the beginning of the movie. Now, another example is like Space Jam, for example. Like it, she's in like there. He's in the cartoon, but he leaves and goes into the real. Like they go into the real world. You know what I'm trying to say?
Right, you're talking about so in the Space Jam example, like he leaves the cartoon world and goes back into
Because that kid's consciousness, right, was in a space where he was basically playing basketball with, his top favorite players and his cartoon players, right? Like, but in
right.
when it goes back into the real world, when it goes to the beginning of the movie, I guarantee you, when he's like leaving or whatever he's doing, it probably starts at like a different movie, like Mike or something. I don't know. It start then a different movie kind of takes off, and this is how movies then different things start getting interconnected. But now when you start watching it backwards and forwards, you start finding different points, which are portal points into different stories, which we'll go into that in a whole. We'll get into that later, but that's going into different characters and understanding. Um, my mic is quiet. I don't know how I can make that louder. Yeah. Let me see.
I know. I mean, it got a little louder as you lean forward, but you know, because I don't know, it might be a thing of distance. I'm not sure, but
Let me try this.
I've been hearing you. It only been like certain points, but I feel like that's more so of a like a connection and not necessarily not being able to hear you. But everybody, let us know how the audio. Continue to let us know how the audio and everything going. Appreciate everybody in the chat. Matter of fact, much love to everybody.
Yeah, I don't know if I can make it louder. I don't think my speaker will work like that. Okay. But anyways, yeah. So that's kind of like what I've been doing. So for example, Yu-Gi-Oh, I've seen that all backwards too. Like I've seen it forwards and backwards. I see it without the subtitles and just watch it in Japanese. You know what I'm saying? Like that's
Yeah,
originally what I did when I was a kid. That's
yeah,
originally
yeah,
what I
yeah.
did as a kid. And then I tried to learn Japanese as a kid, and I almost did. But like, I was writing out characters and stuff, but then it kind of got complicated. But
Gotcha.
I what? But like, after I learned Hebrew, I could almost read Japanese, the actual Japanese characters. I could almost read it from learning Hebrew because the Hebrew characters are almost the same as the Japanese characters. So
Mm.
like, um, and that obviously says a lot. So when you're watching any of that stuff backwards, like Endgame, right?
All right.
So it's the snap. Let's just start there, right? Because you always got to remember the ending part after like the climax didn't happen. That is part of a different storyline that happened. That ending part, which is the fairy tale, that's the thing that a person created in their imagination to create that fake story, to create that to not what like that part is in a different part of the story usually, like in the writing form.
Right, because I was just about to say I done heard you say that before. Like you done spoke on it. Like well, like man, the whole end game movie don't really exist because it was like Thanos already snapped his fingers, so them kind of going back in time.
I gotta say Marvin Jones Melanie Order, like he has his own page, but he did a review and he broke that shit down. I didn't I saw that a few years ago. Like that was not my download. He broke that down.
No, yeah, hey, bro, like you gotta give shout outs to who you know what I'm saying. Look, cause I know how that is for me. That's why I like the video I just did about like the whole Maximilian thing and all that. Like I started it with like, hey, bro, shout out to Bridge and Rock for putting me on Yu-Gi-Oh. Shout out to what I'm saying. Look, you know.
In game is where a certain group started at. It's like a starting point. You know when Wanda told Thanos like whatever she said, and he was like, "I don't even know who you are." That's why like these are reasons why for these certain lines that people don't understand in the movie. It makes
Right.
all that shit sense. So like that shit went back. Like we were saying before, like Infinity War was the end of it. Now Infinity War when they did like when the snap happened, and then Doctor Strange went like, and he was like, "It's the only way" or whatever, right? Now
Right.
what he did, exact wormhole shit we were just talking, where he made him hold to a different reality to pull energy into their space because their world was dying. So what happened was in the second Doctor Strange movie, that's why you saw Doctor Strange in his own homeworld and it was dying. But Doctor Strange left his own homeworld and went to a different, and that's why the whole multiverse of madness. That's what that's about. So he's trying to save their timeline because it's collapsing. And that's what the Illuminati in that Doctor Strange movie, and like the Secret Wars and all that shit. That's going into essentially trying to save a certain timeline because they were pulling energy through a place that they weren't supposed to pull it from, and that's basically why Thanos just pulled up. Like it's just like they were.
So you saying like they were trying to pull energy or so their timeline was collapsing, so they was trying to draw energy from another timeline in order to try to save theirs.
Yeah, because think about it. Think about the first Hulk movie. No one remembers that shit from 2005. Completely different Bruce Banner, right?
I semi remembered. I just remember him having to fight his dad because his dad was also like able to mutate or whatever too. But
Watch that movie backwards. That's what I'm saying. That's different. It's different. Like where did that Hulk go? Remember the old mutants from like X-Men 1, X-Men 2, X-Men 3, and then the first Iron Man movie, right, which was kind of a different Tony Stark.
all right. And when and now again, because for me, for my own clarity, like when you watch it back, what you're saying, you get more of the real story, or you get like a different perspective
Yeah, you
of the
the story.
story.
No, you get that. No. You get the actual story.
Gotcha.
You get the complete story. So with no, okay, with Kabbalah, right? They talk about gnosis, right? Like the whole point of Kabbalah is basically gnosis. Long story
Gotcha.
short, right? Now, the thing is, we don't really in Ethiopia everywhere. We don't really deal with gnosis. We deal with epignosis, which is full knowledge. Like epi just means full, right?
Mm,
So full knowledge, which is completely different than gnosis. So with our language, we write backwards, forwards, up, down. It can like you can read it up and down as well, the characters. But the thing is, that's what it, with our like with our creative side, we do it the way we do it. You know what I'm saying? But with the binary kind of computer programming, which also still comes from Ethiopia, which you can look that up. Like I have a playlist called African Mathematics um, and Science, and it shows how the basically the literal cash register and the way the economy is based off of it comes from accounting system from Ethiopia as well. It's from Kemet as well, but it's like a BBC documentary. They have a whole thing on it,
gotcha.
but yeah, people can check that out. But essentially it's coming from like a simple binary counting system, which is a form of, which is basically numerology. It's basically numerology. So this is going into now Kabbalah and Gematria, right? Now, um, when you're rearranging shit like that, you can not only rearrange things back, you take out the just look at the consonants, you can rearrange things in different ways. So like you know how like in Asia they might like if they say the R and the L, it sounds kind of interchangeable, but in other languages they're not interchangeable, right?
You say in the Asian language, the R and the L is interchangeable?
Well, it sounds very similar because of how they pronounce it, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah, but in other languages, it's not like that. So there's like when you're watching something backwards and for like this goes into how you can rearrange letters and stuff like that.
And I guess in so many ways, like rearrange the quote unquote spell or spelling of of the letters as well, and like the effects it have.
Now, those effects is coming, like we said, from the electromagnetic spectrum, and it's trying to program people or through their brain more so than their mind. But the virtual aspect is now that was another before it was just the brain, but now with the mind, it's essentially that's what the virtual aspect, pulling your mind into that, right?
Gotcha.
But with your DNA, your so-called DNA, now you're two DNA strands, right?
Hmm.
Now, when you're rearranging letters, your DNA strands form those letters, literally. And when they say there's like how many DNA strands, like you have 46 chromosomes or whatever, this goes into the letters of the alphabet or the characters and stuff like that. So
All
your
right.
DNA strand are forming the actual sacred so-called like we can go into DEA and all that as well, but
All right.
starts forming the sacred geometry of uh, that's what the DNA strands do. They form that sacred geometry. So when we're talking about nuclear fusion happening inside of us,
Hmm.
your DNA is called your nuclear. That's your nuclear, like like dioxynucleic acid, right? So that's your where the nuclear fusion takes place in your DNA, right? Now, like we are talking about on the cannibalism type shit, that's going into like the constant needing to consume to produce that energy, which is a nitrogen based system, which it goes into like like NOS, how you put NOS into a car and it makes it go fast, right?
Uh huh.
That nitrogen that's
Wait. You
now
said the nitrogen
that's
is the hyperdrive engine, and what else?
yeah the nitrogen yeah exactly the nitrogen is the hyperdrive engine which creates exhaust, which is going into like chemtrails and all that type of stuff, not necessarily like from oil and gas, but I'm talking about from like nitrogen from the way that the soil is acidic right now, like a lot of the soil on earth,
All right. All right.
but anyways, now on the other level of it, when you're producing metals, and this goes into the DEA aspect, like deoxy etheric alkaline, right? And this goes into the soul and all that as well. We're able to produce the photovoltaic product. It could even be dark light as well, like in the dark. It could be in a cold space as well.
All
Like
right.
I'm literally in the cold right cold. It comes in through our aura and then create minerals in our body, which we turn into metals and shit like that. And then we turn it into DNA. We turn it into RNA, which turns into DNA. And by producing our RNA, we're programming ourselves to do what we do on Earth from our souls. But other people, when they're consuming, like when they're getting their programming through consumption, it's a nitrogen based aspect, which just makes them fart. Like the fart is like the exhaust, and it just go. You know what I'm saying?
And when you brought, wait, you said the the car is the exhaust?
When I meant exhaust, like I was talking about, like if you put like NOS in a car and then you use the NOS and it makes it go way faster, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay. So when you have nitrogen in soil, because they use nitrogen in like Monsanto and all that, they put heavy amounts of nitrogen, like fertilizer, the heaviest, like all of that stuff that more, because when you eat, people eat fruits and vegetables and farm animals and all that, it's all like the reason why they're all pumped up and they're all like jacked, like the cows and like, the fruits and vegetables are so like a certain type of way,
Big,
the
bigger
nutrients
than
and
not,
stuff.
bigger than what
It's
they
the night
should be in essence.
it's the nitrogen aspect. So now when they're talking about the water cycle on Earth, what they did is with the way they created landfills and their pollution system with the Western society, they created nitrogen in the Earth so that they can rapidly grow crop and nutrients in it. So what it does, so like basically it's supposed to be like a ghost system where you have nothing in you but you have fuel. You're able to create fuel. So this is like what we are talking about with like the whole meth and the coke and how I said they created meth, like Nazis created meth and all that type of stuff. And
Mm,
this is the same science, but in different types of technology. You got what I'm trying to say? Like instead of
gotcha.
feeding it to a person, they're feeding it to their car to make it go. And then from there, they developed the rocket ship engine with Dr. Von Braun, like I said, and like you
Right,
said with
right,
the OTO, right? Um, so,
right,
but
right.
that's what that is. That's an entirely different. That creates deserts. That creates like these ice, it creates extreme temperatures in different. It actually what a nitrogen acid is the wormhole aspect is to basically poke Earth because the Earth itself is basically rock. You know what I'm saying? On its foundational level. But all this acidity is to poke holes through the rock to get down through the Pacific Rim at the bottom of the ocean.
Matter of fact,
That's why they put the plastic.
that just came to me. I did a little video on iron, and iron would always come up in my downloads, coming to from the perspective of the first aspect of God or the first archetype of God being through Aries, being connected to Mars, and Mars being connected to iron, and iron having 26, the atomic number of 26 and 26 alphabets, and that first was the word, and the word was God. So the first aspect, Aries, all that, connecting. And then when you actually get into the science of it in connection with nuclear fission and fusion, it's like they figured out that iron is one of the most stable atoms, you know what I'm saying, as far as like when it comes to nuclear fission, like it's more stable than, because it's like when you get past bismuth, that's when a lot of nuclear fission starts to happen, where basically like the little nuclear force can't hold all the protons and neutrons together, so it kind of splits off. And basically, though, iron is like, again, one of the most stable and one of the top. And when I looked at that whole little thing, I did a video on it, but the top elements that were close to iron in that area of stability was also some of the most magnetic metals as well. And I just wanted to also drop the little jewel of y'all could go research this, but Lily Kalisko, who was working with Rudolf Steiner, and she was doing experiments that showed how the actual planetary alignments in connection with the moon, and they was using the moon because you could observe the moon movement in a matter of days compared to like other planets that take longer. But just how the planets and the metals they correspond with, how that actually does have an effect. So like how Mars is connected to iron, Jupiter tin, Saturn lead, Mercury, Sun gold, and the moon with silver, but showing how that actually has an effect or whatever. But
That's
I
exactly.
digress, my brother.
Yeah, actually, but no, yeah, that's 100% true. So like with iron, the thing is, magnetism comes from magnetite. Now I don't know if people seen Pokemon. There's a Pokemon called Magnetite also. That's where they got that from. But magnetite is like an actual
Right, right.
metal. It's an actual metal, right? And that's what produces magnetism. So basically, feel through basically electricity through iron, which is true. But the main way that this is this magnetic field, the majority of the Earth is like 80% iron. That's what they say, and then the core of the Earth is iron, right? So if
Yeah.
Mars is also called Ares, which is iron, right? So they're trying to say the core of the planet is Mars. Long story short, um, that's why it's molten, right? And then they say it wasn't like that; it was like water and all that, which is what they're saying with Shambhala and Agartha and all that stuff, right? So,
Mm.
but they're saying it's molten, right? And then when you get the Danical people, they say the Danical ET group are like the oldest people on the planet, and they're at the center of the planet, which is like, you know, when you see the Afar people in the Danical Depression, how they have like how it's like the lava pit type looking.
Man, I remember you did that. You brought that up in a video a while back. The first video I think we collabed on, and we was talking about like domain expansion and our building moats and domains. And you brought up the Danical Depression and how it's like the lowest point in the world and one of the hottest, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that and Death Valley, California are the two hottest places on the planet. Um, I think they get up to like 50 degrees or whatever. But that is that spot is also the only place. I think there's one spot in Ireland too, but it doesn't really work. But they because most people they don't even measure it there. But they said is it Ireland or Greenland? I don't remember. But basically, you can measure at the bottom of the ocean because obviously they haven't discovered 80% of the ocean. They can't go to the bottom, right? But the only way that they can measure the volcanoes happening at the bottom, though, because the volcanoes, when they erupt at the bottom of the ocean, which is called the Pacific Rim, it's a chain of volcanoes going throughout the whole Pacific
Hmm.
Ocean, right? Um, and in the Indian Ocean, all the way to East Africa and different places like that too. Um, even including up to like the Caucasus, like it's a lot. So in Transformers, they show as Unicron and they show all the mountains, like them creating this junction and stuff. But basically, when those volcanoes go off, the continents start moving and shifting. Which, ironically, with what I've been saying with 2012 and Ethiopian calendar, we're on the fifth seal, which is the continent shifting seal. That's movie Pacific Rim. Godzilla is about. Mecha Godzilla, when they created Mecha Godzilla, that's like trying to create some Pacific Rim type. Actually, that's on the bottom of the ocean. Godzilla goes through the wormholes and he manages other multiple planets, if you want to put it like that. While King Kong is like the king of Earth, you know what I'm saying? So,
Gotcha.
um, but yeah, so then when you get into that level of it, and then Mecha Godzilla, which is going to the virtual space about cloning Godzilla and trying to create an artificial version that the government can use, that's what that movie was. But anyways, with the Pacific Rim and the volcanoes going off, the Danical Depression, so now, if you Google the Balrog from Lord of the Rings, you remember the Balrog that Gandalf would face, like when he was at the volcano. And
I, I think I do remember something. You said when Gandalf was at the volcano and what it was like a bird or something that came at him or what?
not a bird, a giant demon thing came out of the volcano. It's called the
All
Balrog.
right, I'm, I'm not
It has like
catching
it
it,
has like
but
a
I
it's Gandalf the Grey when he went to the volcano, and then in the first movie, the Fellowship of the Ring, and then he got killed by. It's like this giant demon thing that comes out of a volcano with like it's like a Baphomet looking. Really, the Baphomet. I think it's actually depicting Kunum, but because the Baphomet's different. The Baphomet's not Kunum, but it comes out of the volcano with a whip, which is Nubian, right? It's a Nubian whip, and it pulls Gandalf and pulls him to the volcano, and everyone thinks he dies, but then in the second movie, or right? Because what it did is he has to burn off the carbon in the volcano. But the issue is with the pollution with the plastic. Yeah, the "you shall not pass." You know when he says "you shall not pass" and he puts the
uh-huh.
staff down to the Balrog.
You see, I,
That's the Balrog when he says
I just don't remember how the being looked, but I do remember where he came across something and basically it seemed like he had died, but then he ended up like you say he went through this little alchemical inner work session and you know.
now with polluting the ocean with plastic, that ends up going into those volcanoes.
All right.
So about if your digestive system was actually just filled with plastic, like so this goes into what Lord of the Rings was how Sauron was
Mm-hmm.
creating orcs, right? This is what this is going into.
Cause yeah,
Is going into all of that.
I was just about to say, as above, so below, as within, so without, bro. I'd be screaming law of correspondence all day, So any type of movie that you see, like
Now,
with certain type of people, I'm like, you could also translate that to cells in the body. You know what I'm saying?
now with the Balrog, the reason I brought that up is because if you Google the Balrog, basically it says that Tolkien or whoever wrote it got the got from what she's turning face, right? But like if you Google what the Balrog, like the idea of it, like go on Wikipedia see what the Balrog is, it literally shows like a family tree thing, and it says that the Balrog is an Aethianopes, meaning a burnt face. Basically, they're saying the Balrog is an Ethiopian. That's literally what it says. So
Hmm.
they're saying that Gandalf was fighting an Ethiopian. That's what the Balrog was, which is one of the people in the Danakil Depression, an Afar person. Like long story short, when you see like the Kushites on the hieroglyphics.
All right, and yeah, now I remember he kind of got the little two horns and the wing.
Yeah, real quick. Go to the if you have it on if you're looking it up. Real quick, look at the Wikipedia thing for the Google just Balrog and
Let's
then
see.
click that real quick, and you'll see it says Ethiopian or Ethiopian. It's kind of ridiculous because there's no black people in Lord of the Rings. That's the only depiction of
Right.
so-called. But anyways, that's a whole nother story.
And I'm
That's a
not
whole nother story.
I'm
But that's
I'm not familiar with it, but I did hear somebody bring up that the Lord of the Rings basically has a lot to do with Ethiopia, you know. But
all Ethiopian mythology, which is why I find it kind of wild that like this is like when you see what is it, the movie The Clash of the Titans, or the one with Ethiopia and Andromeda, and the whole Ethiopia is all white people, which just blew my mind. It's like some gods of Egypt type shit. But yeah, that's like um but yeah, the Athenian thing, that's talking about the Danakil people in that area.
all right. And you said what part of what to look up when I go on Wikipedia?
Balrog. Balrog was
All right, I'm on the Balrog Wikipedia, and you said
it should say etymology.
all right, the etymology point. Let's see.
Yeah, it should be like a subheading under there.
Where you at? Where you at? Dang, cause yeah, usually show it on the side. They might have took it off on some shit. Let me see. Oh wait.
It says Athenian and has two arrows.
All right, I did see some. It's talking about Balrog. All right, yeah, and they. But oh, all right, yeah. Cause and that goes into when I brought up. I think I brought up that to you as well about the whole like it was something connected with xenophobia and Ethiopian and Zeus. I forgot what it was I brought up, but like Ethiopian meaning blackface or something like that. But you know, all right, yep.
One of
It's
one of
the,
Zeus's titles one of Zeus's title is the Ethiopian. One of his titles is the Athenianopes. Like
and that's what they got on here at first.
he has titles. One of his titles is so literally
They got Sigilwara or Sigilwara, but then on the side they got
yeah.
Ethiopian. You know,
Because what they're doing is they're using the Hindu Kush side of things, but they can't understand it unless they decipher it using our language. So like
right,
they have to put the source how they deciphered it. You know what I'm saying?
right.
Um, but that's what I'm trying to say. Like if we just told our stories forwards versus other people telling our stories backwards. But yeah, the reason I brought up the Balrog is because that's dealing with the Danakil Depression. That's dealing with the Afar people. So what they're depicting is the
All right. And again, the far people was
depiction of the people the Kushites.
there are people who still live in the Danical Depression area, or they used to be there, or
Yeah, they're like nomadic somewhat they say, but they live in that area. They travel around a little bit, but they say the Magi are most likely connected, which are like the people who protect the pharaohs and stuff. They say they're most likely connected with the Beja and the Afar people, and but yeah, they got like those curved swords usually. They got like they speak a Cushitic language and or old Cushitic language. They'd be like surviving in the desert for like months just on like their camel milk, and they'd be digging holes in the earth like in the desert,
hmm
finding hot springs or little, they feed the camel the water, and then the camel processes it so that when they drink the milk, it's safe to drink. It's also hot spring water, which is completely safe, which has a lot of sulfur, which actually lets you produce a lot of blood as well, like the proper sulfur, not this nasty sulfur. But that is they also drink that water as well, so they can survive like months without that. They're the ones that have like the crazy, like the perfect looking locks and stuff like that, right? Or the perfect afros.
all right. I think I might have seen a picture. before as you say that with the locks, but all
So
right.
that's where Jesus depiction came from, and like Caesar, and like with the Renaissance wigs and all that, they got that from that. That's what they mean by like hair like wool and all that. But anyways, that's those people saying is the Balrog. They're saying so that is also going into like the Levitical order, and that's going into parts of why like the Bible, where you're able to write things only from that region about like things that would happen in the future, because they're able, like right now for example, since the year I think 2000, they scientists have been in that area so they can monitor the volcanic activity, so they can measure the tectonic activity happening there.
Wait, so you
That's why they're able to like
so you're saying they could tell the future off of monitor they could tell the future off of monitoring the volcanic activities, what you're saying?
they can tell when continents are going to shift and different things are going to
And and no coincidence.
volcanic activity.
All right, no coincidence that black obsidian, you know what I'm saying, is used is known as the stone of prophecy, and being able to tap into the future. Word to me wearing it with Moldavite right now.
Yeah, no, I got it. So like it's obsidian, some real shit. That's why in Minecraft they make the obsidian door and then they light it with flint, aka carbon, and
Hmm.
then it creates a portal to hell, and they could just go to hell. But it's like a purple gamma portal. But it's not hell. Like it's the Egyptians would have called it the nether, or the fields of Haru. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, the
Gotcha.
fields of Aru. But also they also kind of
All right. Gotcha.
the Nether
All right,
lands.
like and I'm not too familiar, but you made me think of the meta netta uh
Exactly.
and
It's a
the
language of netters, which are actually like beings. You know what I'm saying? Like
and
they're
and
a
ne-
force, if you want to describe it.
and netters are they that's basically like nature spirits or nature beings in essence. I'm
Like like a yeah, basically, but they are the essence of nature. So a nature spirit is something that doesn't have a soul. So a nature spirit is like a nymph, like some of those elves and shit like that. Golems, right? Like those are nature
gotcha,
spirits. You know? That like, but these are the essence of nature. So it's different. And now you see
gotcha.
the word essence and eshu, right? But this is going into a whole thing. So this is where like Hellraiser and Pandora's box, and then you see Osiris come out of like Pinhead, aka Osiris, right?
All right,
I don't know if you've seen Hellraiser, but that then in Yu-Gi-Oh you get the card Jinzo, right? So it's the same card. Like this is going into a whole world of things. But that's like a in Yu-Gi-Oh that's a psychic deck. Um, so here, like long story short, with that, how should I put this? Like basically with spikes on his back, that's represent all the different mountains, which are kind of like portals to different worlds and stuff. But it's representing the volcanoes under the like mountain, like the same thing, but it's representing the volcanoes, except for the mountains that are tree-like and stuff like that. But anyways, it's representing the volcanoes that are under the water, because those are portals to different worlds, and Godzilla, like all those are basically the different worlds he goes to.
gotcha,
Um, now he represents the Balrog as well, because in the movie when you see him sitting at the center of the Earth, where he's just in basically in a radiation center, and then who is it, Dr. Serizawa, he comes with the nuke and he, like nukes himself with, because he had to blow it up manually or whatever to feed Godzilla radiation. Because this goes into
I kind of
this
remember
goes into
that. Yeah,
because this goes into why manga deals with America, Hiroshima, and Nagasaki. So like manga is tied heavily to that.
all right,
So that is like that's why comics and manga, like in the manga world or in the comic world, there's literally a war between the Japanese and the Greeks, and this Joe and the ninja, and like what you're seeing, because when you're seeing uh in GI Joe, like that's tying into like the Thelemites, with Hydra, and how Hydra got with like the Japanese and the Dragon Society, or not the Japanese, sorry, not the Japanese. I think it was the Chinese and the Dragon Societies, certain Dragon Societies and stuff like that. So the happening in the comic book.
all
So,
right.
but the way they describe them as the villains, right? So like it's literally a lot of the villains in that comic world is like just the people in the manga world who are just like, you know what I'm saying? But like one came, like one is, it's just based off of like origin stories and where they're based off of. So the process though with volcanoes, it's long story short, it's just supposed to take carbon and then use the carbon to produce more earth, and then it releases certain amounts of fumes, right? But now there's plastic going in there. It's slowing the ability to produce gold and for the earth. Volcanic rock is iron is mainly the only thing that produces magnetism. Like everything else, don't get me wrong, is magnetic. It can be magnetic, like silver can be ferromagnetic, other metals can be magnetic, but it's like a byproduct of the magnetism that comes from iron. So when they say the Earth
Right.
is 80% iron or whatever, and the core is iron, that core where the smelting process happens, that's where like the iron is happening because the iron is actually in the lava. What they're not telling people is the majority of the iron that they're saying that is in the Earth is in a liquid lava state.
Gotcha, gotcha,
Yeah,
gotcha.
it's not in the soil because these worms and all this shit change the
I was just about to say the only place that probably, when you brought that up, I thought of like probably the only places is like around well for sure Arizona comes to mind in the whole Sedona vortex and that kind of giving off that Mars energy, but then also I don't know if it's probably both. I want to say Memphis second, so don't quote me, but I know somewhere around Georgia, there's quote unquote the red clay area. You know what I'm saying? But
so. But yeah, that iron in the red clay, that's like another level. So because keep in mind, what is showing run it backwards. The Balrog was standing there. He said, "You shall not pass the Gandalf." That's what he said. You gotta watch it backwards. I'm telling you, all this shit backwards makes sense because Gandalf was the one trying to pass through, not the Balrog. So why is he telling the Balrog, "You shall not"? The Balrog has never left that spot before, ever. Like, why is he? He doesn't have to fly up to go. He just goes into the volcano and goes downwards because it's like a fish traveling in water. Why would he go up? So it's like when he said, "You shall not pass," he was talking to Gandalf. So
gotcha, gotcha.
he smacked the fake black off him and turned him pure white, bro. That's all I could say. That's all I could say. It was not an alchemy process for him. I was kind of just trying to be nice about that, but it was a black face.
Hmm. Cause I was just about
Put
to
it in the
say,
movie. I thought it was funny to put that in the movie.
again, like in most stories, the characters are gonna be flipped a little bit, hence why I even,
And
watch.
movie ends, think about it. It ends with them stealing the rings. It ends with them stealing the rings in the first movie, and they tell a story about how they inherited the rings. That's how it ends.
You talking about the Fellowship of the Ring? You talking about like, all right,
Yeah,
right, right.
it ends with all of them stealing the rings and then dividing it and saying that stealing all the gold and then dividing it and saying that they inherited it. That's how Lord of the Rings ends. But they make but they are the and then that's why the hobbits had all of their like when Bilbo had all that shit in his crypt. Yeah, they were just
Right.
all stealing, hoarding in the hills and stuff like they were doing. So
And I watched because I watched The Hobbit for the first time. I watched the three movies of The Hobbit because I didn't know those existed, so I kind of got up on those too for the first time. So all right, because they had the dragon with all the gold and the gold driving the little dwarf king crazy or whatever. That was a
so
little vibe, but
that's called the gold rush. So like Europeans, all these different groups of people when they first came in contact with gold, that's what like we were talking about much gold at, at that. So that's what created the gold rush effect, where people were like kind of like a someone who's like withdrawing from drugs and they need, you know what I'm saying, like that kind
right,
of
right.
effect. Um, and that's what they people go crazy to do all the shit that they do. Um, but yeah, if it makes it difficult, like this virtual space for people to like use their processing skills to like look at things backwards and from different angles, I'm like, you know what, might as well just go in the virtual space and then run the videos backwards and from different angles. You know what I mean? Because they'll just fill the gap.
Wait, so say that again. Say that again, so I could.
So I said if they use ways to like on a level, it can be used for a good thing. Don't get me wrong, but I'm saying until you have that, until not you, but like until people have that processing ability, like
Right.
it's hard to, you know what I'm saying? So like basically like if you just use videos, do movie reviews, like video reviews, run them backwards, run them from different angles, and show how
Mhm.
like what they're actually talking about, how they're connected to different stories, and how it's all one story. Basically, it's all one thing, not just a bunch of different genres and shit like that. Because it's not like you just live a horror movie. Like you have love, you have horror, you have action. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
So
right,
you
right,
could,
right, right.
so it's like when you put all that shit together by running it like that, it kind of that people be putting on by when you just watch it on face value.
You saying when you look at
Because
all the different types of genres of movies and shows, it kind of brings the bigger picture in. It kind of faded out a little bit, so I'm trying to.
yeah, no,
All right.
exactly that. Because like one story that might be like a horror movie, if you run it backwards, it might not be a horror movie.
Right, because it kind of has a different perspective of, again, like when you watch it from the beginning to the end, or should I say again, from, because I get what you're saying in the essence of like the way, so what we call forward when we watching a movie, like we watching a movie from beginning to end, is really
Mhm.
uh the back is really backwards in essence. And when we watch
Right.
the movie backwards, is really giving us like the forward or the true, essence of it. If I'm,
And that's
all right,
that's literally what it is. Because that's why when you grab a book, you read the back
right,
first.
right.
You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
because yeah,
It
the
tells you
back of the
everything.
comics are just books in general kind of give like a little,
Right.
either
Yeah.
like
Some people.
a review type of thing of like, like a little bit of a summary and then, oh, these people gave it 5 thumbs up. What an exhilarating book or whatever, whatever. I know that'd be in the back of the books too, but
No, exactly. That means read it backwards first. Like, you remember when people would make movie trailers and sometimes they'd be so bad, you'd be like, damn, I feel like I just watched the whole.
right, 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 right.
It's because they're not using the structure. Like, they're trying to speak the actual normal language and just tell you a story. But, like, the way that they use the writing style was, like, in the Western world, it does that weird backward forward shit to, like, throw plot holes and twists and all that stuff. So, like, that that basically the real issue energy would be like basically like how we're talking about breaking that down and seeing through the trick energy. But like on the bullshit level, when people might not know how to interpret that shit, that's when you just watch
Right,
it forwards and then you have to like wait. Because think about it, if you watch something and then you don't get it till like 20 years later, like think about a lot of those horror movies. It starts with something and then you
you say it starts with something.
energy that was attached to something from that. Like it would be like, oh, someone died in this house and they moved into that house, or like when you were a kid, or when someone was a kid, something happened, and then 20 years later, when they're an adult and they have kids, it's like something's happening. You
Right,
know what I'm
right,
saying? Um, but the thing with that is like, it's dealing with the aspect that the person hasn't processed whatever that was, and because they haven't processed it, they are living out whatever that was till the point they processed it. So if as children they're being programmed with virtual shit and then they don't process that shit till they're 20, 30, whatever, or they might never process it, they're gonna be living out that programming. You know what I'm trying to say? So like, um,
I, I get what you're saying in essence. Again, like as you say, like they watching or like going into these virtual worlds or their energy, you know, it's kind of like when we're talking about shadow work and like basically trying to integrate the soul, like when they're tapping into the artificial, or not even say artificial, when they tapping into the technology externally too much, it's almost like fragmenting parts of their soul. So it's kind of like the opposite of shadow work, and you know what I'm saying, the
and
integration
the
is
skill until they go backwards. That's the issue. Because if they try to develop that skill, it's gonna be like all that shit that was in the backwards processing is now shadow energy, like you just said, and it just even worse. So that's why like you have to kind of like people got to go backwards into like a lot of the programs, whether it's religion, TV, whatever, and run that shit backwards. You know what I'm saying? Like that's that that's the important part about it. Um, yeah, there's two other things I wanted to say. I forgot. One of them was what was it? okay. Well, first thing I forgot what the other thing was, but first thing was um, I don't know. It'll probably come.
I
It'll come back. But
and I was just about
basically,
to say, I know just kind of what came up to me. I know you was breaking down at one point was breaking down like again the whole Judas and uh Jesus difference, again breaking down like the virtual world and how they pulling energy through the virtual world and trying to use it. Uh but I don't know if that helped spark
that they
something.
showed that uh, they showed that really well in American Gods.
See, American Gods was on point. Matter of
Uh,
fact, I was laughing at how Wednesday is actually everybody, every male, almost every male character. I won't even say the future gods, but just like how I've been like discovering like the trickster energy or the Herm Anubis energy through like how it's all kind of one certain being. I'm like, damn. I'm like Wednesday, Anansi, Anubis, told Jesus is all one person. Like when you I'm like, damn, like Wednesday was the whole like just in different little perspectives or whatever. But I'm like,
you know, at the beginning when he was in jail, and then the guy that he was in jail with, and he was telling him like, when you get out of jail, don't piss off the woman at the airport counter, and like, you remember that guy, his like roommate or whatever in jail.
I don't. You talking about Shadow Moon roommate?
Yeah, in jail at the beginning of the show, he was like bench pressing, he was spotting him, he was basically giving him tips, and then when Shadow Moon was like doing shit, like when he left jail, he just kept remembering tips that guy said to him. That was Loki.
All right.
I didn't read the book. I saw that was and
Right,
apparently
right.
Loki
Because
was
again, Odin represents Wednesday or Mercury, and Loki is a trickster. So it's kind of and even again, like seeing how different archetypes, some pantheons, like it'll be like two different archetypes, and then in another pantheon, them two different archetypes come together. You know what I'm saying? Like, and again, I got to the whole. Shout out to Seven Bomar for also running it on this, and just through my own studies, I I got a book. It was called Sefer Sapphires, if I'm not mistaken, but it was basically like a Hebrew gematria or numerology book, and breaking down the
oh
symbols.
the Sefer Yetzirah.
Huh?
You talking about the Sefer Yetzirah?
No, not the Sefer. Yes. So while I'm right here, let me pull it up right quick. But just to talk on it while I'm pulling it up,
Oh no,
I
no, I know
look.
what you're talking about. The book of yeah, the one where they talk about how you permeate the different faces and shit.
It's Oh, S- Sefer Sapphires is the name of the book.
Oh, okay, no, I'm thinking of something else.
Yep, yep. And let me see if I could get the author name as well, since I'm pulling it up. But basically, let's see. And while I'm right here, though, it was bringing up the letter Hey and how Hey is connected to the number five, and then it was bringing up how it's connected to the calf ape or the Cynocephalus, which is like ape, and this also kind of goes into I forgot in what context you done brought it up, but like the whole Ozura thing, in Dragon Ball Z, and it's kind of like the ape dog, like that little
So
connection, and then Toad's connected to not only Mercury but also the moon. Because they don't always bring that up how he connected with the moon. And when a lot of matter of fact, somebody just asked me recently about again like what's the Legba connection with Toad. And again, it's like, well, in essence, for one, it's just the general characteristic of like the trickster aspect and being connected to Mercury, but then it's also the connection with the moon because the moon connects with the rabbit, and the rabbit is the archetype of like the trickster and going through the rabbit hole or going through the different worlds as well. But I digress. You was about to say something.
yeah, no, you got like I had to like make like 5 points off that. Like, I had to like take like mental notes off. Yeah, so that bunny archetype that goes into a whole deep thing. So on my YouTube, my anime channel, when I talk about beyond axis, and like that's like the series I've been doing about how kind of we're connecting all this shit together right now.
All right.
Basically there's a thing called Tower of God, and that tower is like the Tower about however you want to look at it, but that tower, it's like the tower in Dark Tower and all that. But basically there's a bunny thing that like is like the gatekeeper to that tower. Now that bunny thing is kind of tied to the Balrog and Kunum and all that as well, but because the bunny
All right.
originally come the bunny's a clone, right? The original thing is hare, right, from Africa, the hare.
Gotcha.
Now the
Gotcha.
hare has an extremely weird genealogical line, which I'm not going to really explain right now because I don't know. I don't think hares want scientists to know about this shit. Otherwise, they yeah, put it like that. But like, there's a reason why into bunnies and like people think they're studying mice. Well, I guarantee you, like that those mouses came from them genetically, them basically organ taking organs out of a rabbit and then seeing if they could. Like, they created a mouse out of organ harvesting a rabbit. Long story short, that's
Gotcha.
basically
Gotcha.
what that is. And then they created the rat. So that's like a created animal. That's not a real animal, but that um
Now this comes
so
from
they are trying to
uh this comes from your own uh inner inner awareness or certain books or something that led you to that.
unless from it's always my inner awareness is being to a source of research. You know what I'm saying? When I'm meditating,
Gotcha.
whatever. But it brings me to shit to research. So I don't go to Google to pull shit out. Like I like I don't know, it's a little bit different. That's why I don't really like the internet too much because I feel like every time I put shit in, like put my consciousness into it, like it tries to pull information. Like I feel like the shit's trying to study me. So I try not to interact with it too much.
I get you.
But I try to use like um but yeah, the bunny though, like if you actually went into the studies of how a bunny, because they know a bunny was a genetically modified animal from a hare. Now, if you actually go to the, because everything has been recorded, all like that's one unit. That's actually a cosmic law for real. Like every form of it, a lot of times when they put it backwards and they try to, you know what I'm saying, like hide the info. But the thing is, the bunny, like if you actually go into the research of how it got created, because they're not going to tell you on a piece of paper this is identically or
Right,
this
right.
is exactly how it went down, but if you trace it, you're going to see first of all the bunny came from the hare, and then mouses didn't even like when they released bunnies all over Australia, because if you don't realize, like if you didn't notice, like the hare and the kangaroo is really similar too, you know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Yeah, so like when they released the bunnies into Australia and it caused that crazy like invasion that almost wiped out a lot of like native populations, like this is like destructive. And then when they created the mouse, because the mouse didn't even exist. Like, do we have mouses? And
You,
I'm not sure,
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
but we don't. Like the animals they consider rodents in Africa aren't rodents. They're from a completely different genetic species, but they're not rodents. And that's what I'm saying. They have a confusing genetic line. But the rodent species, which they kind of tie with like the beaver and the bear and stuff, which is also different. Um, like that's a created species. Like that species didn't even like. But there's a fine line between rodents and other things like hares and things like that that aren't technically rodents. Like they have those two buck teeth and like the two ears, like, but they're not necessarily. But yeah, the rodents are created animal. But that's like people can kind of go look into how that is. They show it to you in the movie Us. They have like a whole thing about bunnies, and they show you how like when they're cloning the people in Us, like they have the bunnies there and they show you that and all that. But
Gotcha. Gotcha.
yeah, I was bringing that up. Yeah, so with the bunny thing, like that's one metaphor for the rabbit hole, like for the portals. But if you think about like a mouse in a maze, you know what I'm saying? Um, things like that, like it's going into the same type of a similar type of animal. So, like you said, the bunny or the rabbit and all, or the hare, mouse is a little bit tied with like other planetary and that. Um, but that's because of like missing components, if you
Got
want to put it like that. Um, what's the other part I was going to get into though? I think it was the Judas and Jesus thing with the tree and this virtual thing. What was it? Um,
it.
oh, right. I was gonna bring up one thing from Yu-Gi-Oh here. was when in Duelist Kingdom, you know when you saw Kaiba and after Pegasus, when he took, Pegasus took their three souls and stuff like that. He took
Uh-huh.
Kaiba's soul, Yugi's grandpa, and Mokuba, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
yep, yep.
rewatched Kaiba. He was saying person that did not like in the original Yu-Gi-Oh when he mind crushed Kaiba with Exodia and all that shit. That didn't even make him a good person. So how is getting his soul taken, getting put it back? Because mind crush is worse than that. So like, how did that did not like he just became a good like that was a clone basically. And then this goes into a lot of stuff that happened in the rest of Yu-Gi-Oh because they were trying to Pegasus was trying to not Pegasus but someone was trying to take over Kaiba Corp. And this is why in the Yu-Gi-Oh 5Ds you have a company called Leo Corp after or sorry in Yu-Gi-Oh Zexal you have a company called Leo Corp, and in Yu-Gi-Oh 5Ds, Kaiba Corp, like the free energy reactor, the CERN reactor that they use for free energy that, their
Uh-huh.
energy, that thing explodes, right? And when it that's the end of so-called Kaiba Corp as they know it. But that Kaiba was a clone, so I just wanted to connect that with the whole Toon World thing and what he was
You
doing.
saying the Seto Kaiba in the first season of Yu-Gi-Oh, the first, you know, and matter
Kingdom,
of
yeah.
fact, in season 0, that Seto Kaiba is a clone, or the one that's in the what's
Um,
considered the
I'm
first
not. Ta-
season.
I'm not talking about season zero right now. I was just talking about the Mind Crush in season zero. But the Kaiba that Kaiba after he got his soul back from Pegasus clone, like he literally just responds to Yugi. He's like, "Thank you for everything," or some. This guy doesn't fund
Right, right,
people.
right,
Like,
right, right, right.
what kind of? But those three cards that he took the souls into, that goes into a whole deep thing. So, um, yeah, that goes into a whole deep thing. But that I just wanted to bring up as like that was when Kaiba Corp got taken over, and that's why in Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal you see Leo Corp, which is when they're in the virtual world. So in Yu-Gi-Oh! There's a war. A lot of people don't really know this, but in Yu-Gi-Oh! There's a war going down, and it's actually going down to the level of the people who created it and the writers and all that shit, to the point of because like what happened was when I talked about this whole manga,
Hmm.
time people be making comics and shit because it's so separate from the Western world. Like it's like a separate. It's a lot of people in the comic book world have been trying to just like steal shit from manga, just mad shit. Like people are trying to make manga comics and all this weird shit, and it's like I even did a video on this, but I just didn't post it. But a lot of people don't really know how to consume like Japanese content because it's like different how they consume it and how that is dealt with. So it's just like there's a like you're seeing a lot of so-called anime, but it's not anime. It's just Western comic people making animes, but they're just trying to put their stories over top of that shit.
I get what you're saying. Matter of fact, could do you have some examples of it? If you don't, it don't matter. But I'm just asking since you bring it up.
The only ones I'll give a little bit of credit to are like ones like Blood of Zeus and like those type of like the Ragnarok one and like I didn't watch that, but like those type of ones on Netflix because they're not really trying to like they're making Greek shit. Like they're not really trying to even if it's not really accurate, they're not really trying to make like it is kind of it has an accuracy to an extent, but like it's not like they're trying to that's one like I'll give credit to that. Like that's kind of cool shit. Like I like Blood of Zeus, that was kind of cool. But the stealing type of shit, it's like Yu-Gi-Oh. Like okay, for example, the original Yu-Gi-Oh is called Yu-Gi-Oh. So when we're talking about Yu-Gi-Oh Season Zero, it's not called Season Zero. It's just called Yu-Gi-Oh, and that was
Right,
made by
right.
Toei. Now, what happened was they got into a whole and they created something called Yu-Gi-Oh Duel Monsters. What everybody thinks Yu-Gi-Oh is, but Yu-Gi-Oh is not Duel Monsters. The original Yu-Gi-Oh is like, and if you go on my occult anime channel, you can watch my one of my first videos that is available or public, which is not my tarot video, but the Yu-Gi-Oh Part One video after that, where I explain all of this. But basically, the way it starts is Yu-Gi-Oh Season Zero. Again, it's just called Yu-Gi-Oh. Now, when they got taken over and shit like that, they made Yu-Gi-Oh Duel Monsters, which is something else. So when they made those games like Card Fight Vanguard and those other games, those were based off of Duel Monsters, which is a different company. Now, with original Yu-Gi-Oh, in Yu-Gi-Oh, it was about the King of Games, which he's the king of
Right.
in that game Magic and Wizards as well, which is similar to like Dungeons and Dragons and all that. So that's an entirely different game. entirely different game. Like you could have all normal monsters with no effects, and but like the way that like your imagination uses it, you actually create like spells and trap. Like you create like it's an entirely different game. But that's not what even just Yu-Gi-Oh is. That was just Magic and Wizards, which was one of the games within Yu-Gi-Oh, which is just one of the games because he was inside of his dad or his grandpa's game shop, which had many games, right? So
Right.
Yugi, when he wanted to get older, he wanted to just make a game shop where people can come play games and shit, and like it was almost like a school, but it was just a game shop, right? But what happened was, and they show you in Yu-Gi-Oh Season Zero what happened. Like these so even some next level shit. It's like it's so shit. When Yu-Gi-Oh Duel Monsters came out, they made a whole show about the card game, and they just wanted to make money off of the card game. And if you don't know, Duel Monsters is the biggest card game in the world. They make like billions yearly, I think. Like it's just crazy.
And now Yu-Gi-Oh, what, say for instance the Yu-Gi-Oh that's considered the first Yu-Gi-Oh that in most cases you could see on Crunchyroll and basically considered the first season. That's Yu-Gi-Oh Duel Monsters you're saying?
That's Duel Monsters. Yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh Season Zero. What you're talking about? It's not called Season Zero. It's just called Yu-Gi-Oh. That's what it.
That's the original. Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha.
Yeah, they can. But Duel Monsters based off of Yu-Gi-Oh from another trying to take their shit. That's what I mean. It happened with Beyblade. It happened with well, kind of Digimon. Digimon's been doing a really great job with that because Digimon is still made by Toei Animation, which is who made the original Yu-Gi-Oh.
Gotcha.
So that is really. But Beyblade kind of got taken over, and that's why in Beyblade they had a war with the BBA, the Beyblade Battle Organization, and then this new organization called like Bega, which is like a different organization. But in Yu-Gi-Oh they had League versus Kaiba Corp, right? And that's why they basically took Kaiba's soul and had someone else be act as Kaiba so they could take the corporation. And his name is Seto Kaiba, right? So his bloodline is Set. So the, the comedics too, not biblical. So this is now that is like that's what I mean by comics and manga because as soon as they start taking off and doing their thing, they basically try to buy their shit out so they tell the story backwards. But these writers are still so good that they've implemented all of their stories within Yu-Gi-Oh anyways. So around 5Ds,
Hmm.
which is around GX to 5Ds, around that time period is where the timeline kind of like it shows it shows certain things in our world and stuff like that that happen. So around then is like how do I put it? Is when they went from the original world to the virtual world.
All right. All right, I get you. You said in Yu-Gi-Oh 5D they kind of switched to more of a virtual aspect.
Now, when they went from the original world to the virtual world, because the original Yu-Gi-Oh was about people connecting with spirits. They didn't even need cards and shit, right? But the
Right.
but this is about dual monsters, which is them creating a portal to connect with spirits because they can't connect with them. So the thing is in the virtual world, they are trying to connect to actual people living. You know what I'm saying? So trying to
Right.
so like if they're trying to use another person for energy, you would feel it like something like they're trying to use like energy from like a certain organ, certain things. You're gonna have like you might have a certain problem if it's actually affecting you. Like that's and to them they think it's just like they're playing a game or they're doing something else. But
Now, as you say this, man, I don't mean to. Now it kind of makes sense why I see why Seven uh creating like this the AI to basically be like a search engine for like a code information and stuff like this. But basically like creating like people creating healthier options and options on the internet where you're not in essence getting your having like a negative what I'm saying pull from it in essence so to speak.
originally for me, like I made an app, like a social media app, years back, and then this is when I started getting attacked by like secret societies and all this shit. I didn't even know any of this shit existed. Society information because I made a social media app in a similar, like I still have it, but like in a way where just like
Gotcha.
it's just a healthy social media. I'll just put it like that. And I've just been battling trying to like get it out for years now because it had been out low key. It kind of was actually out, but I didn't even know it was out. Even though like it was up, I didn't even really know it was up.
Gotcha.
But yeah, the thing is like that's what that's like a really good example of how as soon as you start telling like your own story, your own information, bigger corporation, things like that. They try to like swallow your shit on some, I guess, whale type of shit, and then try to rebrand your shit. You know what I'm trying to say? Um,
Right, right.
they understood that shit, so they're basically fighting it from inside of the fucking thing they're inside of. So um, now what it went into was it went into this machine type of shit. So what happened is they started printing. So originally the way cards were made was like a it was a very, I don't know if I should use the word gifted, but like a very talented person, right?
Mhm.
And basically drawing these cards in like a kind of origami style that creates a holographic effect if you look at it correctly. And by interacting with them, you're gonna understand like it's actually a holographic game just with the cards alone. It's literally just wood and it creates a holographic effect. It's crazy. But when
Gotcha.
you but later on, what they started doing is they started printing it like a Yu-Gi-Oh printing press type. Started changing how the cards were printed, and what happened is they started printing because the way cookie
Mm-hmm,
industry is
mm-hmm.
that okay, people say there's like real fortune cookies and fake fortune cookies.
I didn't know there was a such thing as that, but and
Some
like
people say there's real ones like where you got a real fortune, and then there's fake ones where it's just like some people printing some shit over and over again. You know what I'm saying?
gotcha, gotcha.
So that's kind of the idea with it. Basically, they took over the game so they can make money off of duel monsters, but that's literally a way of like almost like soul and spirit trafficking. But then it became a way for people to try to use a game to control people. Gaming and sports like basketball and NHL. Gaming also like the gaming industry, like like computer games, Yu-Gi-Oh. Those are major part of like the gaming industry is bigger than the sport industry, and Yu-Gi-Oh is one of the biggest games there is. So like that shit makes so much money people don't even realize, and people might not be realizing that just because your binary data got scanned at like 6 years old while you were doing something, a Yu-Gi-Oh card could have got printed out of that later on because they were trying to like fill the gap of basically computers trying to reverse engineer a certain story. They couldn't
Uh,
figure out mythology.
and now that kind of brings it full circle, again, like just being aware how your energy. I think you brought up like the RFID thing, and you being scanned, and that image or energy being brought into this virtual world, and how like again like a virtual world voodoo doll type of energy of like, all right, we done took that energy from this person. Now we could play with it, and as we play with it, it'll work at a distance on that person. In essence, that's kind of what you're speaking to. In essence.
Exactly. That's going into the chat GPT aspect. So for example, like these videos, if people like if like maybe not this video, but like if they use chat GPT, like certain break down and get a whole like a
Mhm.
vocabulary, like based off of like basically like they already have vocabulary, it's just words, right? But if they use like they can use sound software to basically break down your voice so that you can produce words that you haven't made as long as you made certain sounds.
Gotcha, gotcha.
So basically this is what Stephen Hawking created so he can basically speak. It's a real technology. uh,
Uh, wait. All right. I'm not familiar. You talking about the chat? The chat. How you say that?
chat GPT. So
Chat.
Stephen Hawking,
GPT.
he's fully paralyzed, but he can speak. His wheelchair speaks, like his mind speaks through his wheelchair. Elon Musk and Neuralink. I don't know, because Stephen Hawking's been doing that. No one's been
Right, right,
questioning it.
right.
Like no one's been questioning that. A damn talking wheelchair connected to his mind. Like come on, like no one's been questioning any of this. That shit is
And
crazy.
matter of
But
fact, as you bring that up, and we laughing, but it's like again, we laugh at our quote unquote mistakes and this, but this is kind of like a thing to really, be aware of in that sense of how, movies and certain things like are used also to like desensitize certain things. Because even as I bring up like that show, The Boys, and a lot of other shows I've been seeing where because me personally, I'm not super, I'm very protective of my subconscious, and I don't like to feed a lot of horror stuff to my subconscious. And
exactly,
I'm noticing like how they trying to like it's like indirectly trying to normalize a lot of bloodshed. I'm like,
talking
eh,
about. I hate that.
and I'm like, bro, I'm peeping that on the subtle vibes. And I'm like, it almost kind of make me don't want to watch, some of the shit. I always kind of have that vibe of like, hey, I'm protected and just be aware, but you know, and it works out that way. But even still, I'm like, you know,
Trust
I, I
intuition.
I only watch it or be guided to watch it because there are some gems that was necessary for me to receive through it. But ultimately, you know what I'm saying? Like I see how again, like the whole just overly blood thing. And again, cause you're like, oh man, like it becomes a thing where the children are just regular people, where it's like it's normal. So when stuff kind of happen in real life, oh, like a purge, oh, that's kind of normal for people to hunt other people. You know what I'm saying? Like it kind of in essence, like kind of
That's
programs a
that's even
normalization of some old, you know,
that's even why I talk about cannibalism, because people think if you start starving that you're gonna go eat people, and it's like what? Like that's like a normalized form of thinking with how people look at just food and science, right? They feel like if you're gonna starve to death, the thing that's gonna happen is you're gonna go eat a person. That's what people. That's they try to
right, right.
it is, right? That type of shit, like the movie Split. There's no way I'm watching that. There's no way I'm watching that. Like I don't need to watch a movie about a dude split personality. Like run it backwards. It's about a dude trying to fix a split personality, ends in a mental hospital. So I don't need to watch that movie. You know what I'm saying? Like I just ran it back right there.
Man, and as you say that, bro, like you just kind of touched on bases on something I experienced, and yeah, uh, cause I did watch that movie, but it was more so cause I got introduced to it, and I was just getting some, my little ancestors and spirit guides kind of let me know a part of me watching that are being, uh, just how can I say, somebody suggesting it to me. It wasn't for the healthiest reasons in essence. But continue.
That's what happened. That's what happened with me. I mean, they watched it by themselves in theaters or with their friend or something. I didn't go with them. I was not watching that. Like it basically anytime they try to program you with some bullshit, just instead either skip it or just watch it backwards without the sound. Because, okay, this is another part as well. I also watch things forwards and backwards, but I also do it with sound and without sound.
All right. Watching it forward and backwards, but again, backwards to forwards, and also without sound.
Without sound, because it's an entirely different story when you watch it without sound. Entirely different, like completely different. And this is probably why sound is dealing with the fourth dimension and light is dealing with the fifth dimension. So light is what we're seeing. Because think about it, when you sketch an anime or manga, you do it in black and white, and then you add the words after, right? Like
Right.
the box. So the first thing is the images, and then you add the words, the text, and then you add the color and shit, or whatever order you would go with that. But if you take away the words and you watch it, it's an entirely different story. Like without the words, it's actually the real story. Then when you watch it backwards, you get full understanding of it. And then when you
Got
see like the different languages and you watch it, you get the full like you get all the different angles. But what do you say? Watch. I was just seeing a comment. Watch the old school Frankenstein one the other night. Was a trip when he talked about the Violet Ray, the movie made in the 1930s. Because in back then they used to be way more open about these experiments they were doing. Because the Nazis were doing like open experiments and shit, trying to understand stuff. And that's why I was talking about organ harvesting. Because basically they were reverse engineering. They were taking one thing out of a person one by one, and then they created a golem Frankenstein, and then put it into that one by one to try to basically understand how the human body is wired, but it's wired in so like it's not linear. It's like a not really a spider web, but it's like you know what I'm saying. It connects to a lot of different things. So from there,
right.
they had to kind of if you provoked one thing, how it could stimulate multiple different responses. And this is where quantum computing and like the whole identification thing, and now with Chat GPT, again, if it gets your audio like that, people can create like I remember like 10 years ago I saw someone making a video about Obama speaking and it was just a fake video, completely fake. So
Gotcha.
um but yeah, but those go into deeper shit where people will be like, this person was murdered in like a story, and then you'll be like, is that my like, and it'll be like a court story and shit like that. Like I'm telling you, like they have like it's weird, and it's like the same way with the Stephen Hawking thing about through a wheelchair.
Mhm.
pull information from people's minds and create text on the other side. You know
Gotcha,
what I'm saying?
gotcha. But you said yeah, you could create you said create text on the other side of it?
Like, let's say if I was just sitting here and not saying anything, but I was
Right,
thinking, I'm sure if someone made a wheelchair that can communicate the thoughts out of his mind through a damn wheelchair, I'm sure that these cell phone, like it's a wheelchair, it's a chair. I'm
right.
sure these phones and stuff like that can pull mental, like, and this is going to what the RFID and all that. I'm pretty sure it can translate information from your mind into English characters, just like on the, well, different characters, binary code essentially. But then for people mostly,
Gotcha, gotcha. Nah, bro. Like I definitely know. Look,
yeah, you know, like in court when people just stay silent, they don't speak on anything, whatever. This is where people are trying to create like indictments and like deep think type of technology where they're trying to basically pull the information out of people's minds, whether or not they're going to say it. But that creates a problem because that goes against forensics and the due process.
and that kind of goes into the what's that movie? Total Recall, if I'm not mistaken. Total Recall, and there's another movie that's connected to it too. Uh, Matter of fact, by Philip K. Dick, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and that also goes into creating sentence. It goes into Total Recall heavy. Yeah, the Arnold Schwarzenegger as well, like the older one, and yeah,
It's Total Recall, but then there's another movie, but it's not the same. It's not about like fighting crime. It's about like a double agent type of thing.
there's there's a Sixth Day. It's called the Sixth Day. It's with Arnold Schwarzenegger as well. That's tied to
I
Total Recall.
I watched 6 Day before, and I don't know. I felt like maybe one of my videos like fell through a loop. I felt like I spoke on it and even did a video on it, and I went go look back for it, but I didn't see it. But maybe I didn't talk on it. And I know in the past though, like I would do videos and probably talk about something, but it wouldn't be in the title. So I'm like, it probably got washed into one of my live videos where I didn't put it into the title. But
It's all,
let me see. Philip K. Dick. But yeah, 6 Day definitely on the cloning vibes, and then on like the Genesis or creation story type of energy. And then you told me about a movie
so the,
recently. I forgot the name of it. The Island, I think.
yeah, the island. That one's. Did you watch it?
Yeah, I watched it. Yep, yep, yep. And I gotta watch it
Great.
again because I felt
You
like
run
it
it
was.
backwards though.
And you see, now that you put me on that running backwards thing, like I gotta. And so basically, what you're saying is like, so if I'm not able to like actually rewind it, you know, you're saying like, so say for instance, like the movie ended, I take the little mark and I kind of watch some of the back part of it, and then
Just
kind of.
skip little parts, and I guarantee you, your spirit will connect the parts that you want to click. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like a card falling out of a deck or something. Like you'll click the right spots. Just run it back, or you can just sit there and meditate and think about the movie backwards. But if you do this a lot, because think about this: what do the police say if you get pulled over and you're drunk? Oh, read the alphabet backwards. Who can read the alphabet backwards? I thought about that shit. I'm like, wait, are we alphabet backwards? Yeah, I think Ewan McGregor. I think you're right. From 2003 or early 2000s. It might be. I don't even remember, but the early 2000s.
And
Yeah,
that
it's still with the guy from the Green Mile.
and that was the thing. It's not a Total Recall. The movie I was really trying to say was Minority Report.
Right, Minority Report. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the.
No, that when I told you to watch. When I told you about Control Factor, like I was thinking about Minority Report as well. Like that was because those are kind of tied as well. Yeah, Scarlett Johansson. I think that's the right movie. Wes, I think that's the right one. But
Yeah,
that
yeah. Scarlett Johansson is in the island. Yep, yep. That's her.
so the island is a good one for cloning, but like I don't really want because it's like really good when you get the shock value of what happens in the movie, right? But run that backwards, and you're gonna see what I'm saying. But yeah, after you do this a lot, you can just meditate and you'll just like see the movie backwards and shit. But that breaks any kind of spell or program people for the most part people try to put on it. The only other types of energies that could be attached are usually like old rituals that you might not be aware that is in the movie. Um,
Hmm.
to just random shit in the movie, just like random props and random things. But if you run it back, it's like
So
Usually
so
like
so so that's an important little gem or jewel right there. So you saying like one of the solutions to dealing with programming that be in movies and shows is by watching the show from instead of just watching it again forward to back, by actually watching it from the back to the front. You actually could basically like decast any subconscious programming or spell cast it within the movie. So that's basically what you're saying.
yeah, and if you have time with and without sound, if there's Japanese like different languages and stuff, like I wouldn't watch random languages, just like other languages, but like
Right,
if you
right.
would post Japanese, watching that too, right? But like each one is a different thing, and that's what I was kind of getting at. Like I was gonna basically spend time and do just reviews, like watching different stuff, reviews on YouTube and like doing some videos and stuff like that before I even mentioned any of this, because I wanted to just build a whole catalog of like me doing reviews on backwards, like just me going backwards on it. But I feel like again, I feel like it'll be useful for you to get that because it might take me some time to do that. So it might be useful for you to kind of get that before I even start that. Start that, but I already did it on whole, so I'll put that out. And then Gattaca, like Gattaca or Galactica. Um, but yeah, there's like that adjustment bureau. Adjustment bureau is real similar to minority, or I mean, control. Wait, no, yeah, adjustment bureau is similar to Total Recall. I mean, and the whole thing about love and what breaks you out of that dimension, right? But what they're talking about with love is that portal I'm talking about, where one is a handler and one is a zombie. Like that's really all they're talking about when they say love. That's not really love. So that's all it's talking
Wait,
about. That's why when you run it backwards, it's different.
you talking about when they talking about love in the movie Total Recall or Minority? With
Yeah, because think about it like this: if you watch Total Recall backwards, he was in a simulation and then he broke out of the chair.
all right, all right. As a matter of fact, wait, I remember. Wait, Total Recall is the one where old boy was and be honest with you, I never watched the one with Arnold
Secret agent.
Schwarzenegger, so I'm talking about the newer one.
No, I'm
He
talking.
he was like a sleeper agent, basically like not realizing that he was working for one side and
But what happened was apparently he was depressed with his life, so he went to a place that gives this drug where you can have any fantasy. But the whole thing was if the fantasy was connected to anything you've actually done in your past, it can cause like the machine to fail and cause you to like basically like die or some shit. Like he was saying it could cause extreme failure. So he was saying so he gave him the injection. He was like, I want to be a secret agent. And then he was like, okay, well, we're running your files and everything looked good. And then second to when the fluid is about to hit his bloodstream, before it hits his bloodstream, because the fluid is still in like the tube, it hasn't
uh-huh.
really hit his bloodstream yet. He goes, wait, turn it off because you're actually a secret agent. So what they're trying to cast is like this illusion, like is this actually real or not? Because it happened before the serum hit his blood, right? So cast this type of illusion where at the end of the movie where they don't know where he doesn't really know what's real or not. But if you run it backwards, he's actually he's actually in a virtual reality simulation where they're calling him a secret agent. But then he breaks out of that and goes literally home. Like he just goes home, and that attaches to the Pacific Rim movies where he's building. The same guy is building those Pacific Rim robots and shit. As weird as that sounds, it's connected to that movie, the new Pacific Rim movie, Uprising.
So when you bring up that one, let's see where is.
And that's what I mean by portals. So if you watch the end of Total Recall, it will take you to a whole different catalog of movies. But if you watch it backwards, it's going to take you to a different category of movies. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right, right. All right, bam. So you kind of even get like a different genre of the movie by watching it from back to front. Is what you're saying?
Because this is how you use the virtual world and navigate the virtual world without navigating you. So the Eshu energy, like in the actuality of it, is you breaking through illusions and being disillusioned. But the way that it's being used with this other shit is to illusions to put people into. You know what I'm saying? But the actual Eshu energy breaks the illusions. then it can also create realities and shit like that. But yeah,
Got you,
it's
got
mainly to
you.
break illusions. As far as what I've come
Right, right,
through my
right.
experience
So
with it, at least.
in essence, again, is not necessarily uh is not to necessarily be a trickster in illusion harmful type of manner, because I get it, like I get what you're saying, and I know like with my expression of it is more so like, again, like the story of being in this realm and how this realm is an illusion, but not an illusion from a perspective of a trick necessarily being played on you, but more so like just an illusion or a light show. And within this, experience, having to realize to not try to create, like, the trick is not necessarily the quote unquote illusion part, but more so like, I guess, understanding the mirror part of like how you're creating your own experience, and not to like try to scapegoat somebody as like, oh, it was them, and not sitting looking for.
That that's that's the first part, like where you're trying to get into the mirror energy, the shadow, because that's the shadow,
Uh-huh.
right? But what you're essentially trying to do is go from the sound to the light into the dark, because you want the light to be in the, like when it says in the beginning was the word and the word was with God, and he created basically the face of the deep was hovering over, or the spirit of God was hovering over the face of the deep or the darkness.
Right,
And then it said, then the first thing that he did was create light or whatever he created, right?
right,
Which not the sun. The sun, what he created on like the fourth day. Man, he created Adam. He created on the sixth day. Hence the movie The Sixth Day. It's talking about
right,
alone. He created angels on a different day, which is actual. That's human. That's Adam, like the sixth day. But the other Adam, which Jewish people call Adam Kadmon, you can Google that. They call it celestial Adam before he lost his rib or whatever. That is talking about essentially um, he never left the darkness, God, because the word when he was first the word they used for God, they use Elohim out like different word from those two verses. So they're talking about like when God created something
right,
out of the darkness, Elohim, angels, however you want to look at it. Like he didn't leave the darkness. God stayed there, but the angels went out as his messengers, and this is why angels mean messengers as well, right?
right,
Um, so that God didn't leave the darkness. Now, when people are saying to go back to God, they're talking about just going back into a dark space. But the issue is when they try to go back to the darkness, they get caught up by the shadow. So the shadow is like in between the third and the fourth dimension, and that gets them caught. And you, with the illusions, make people think they're in the fourth dimension, but they're not. And this, but if you watch Yu-Gi-Oh season 0 and the manga and stuff, the shadow game goes into like a because they're not dealing with shadow energy. So now with dark energy, right? Which I made a whole differentiation about dark energy and shadow energy. We've
right.
talked about this a lot, but that's the aspect about going back into that space because it never said God left that space. So when it talks about the redemption of Adam, it's talking about going back into that space because yeah, light is like creating an anime or manga, a comic, anything. When you're writing on that piece of paper, whatever it is, or you're imagining it in your mind, you have to do it in the darkness, right?
Right. It comes from the dark. Right, right,
That the tunes and all that stuff we were talking about, and like it takes away that ability to actually have an imagination unless you have a device like this to basically tap you into that world. But it's not tapping, and that was the other issue too. It's like a lot of times when we're tapping into one space, so for example when you're saying like going into the mirror, it's about like this is about going within. So once you get past that mirror aspect, and this is what that whole aspect with Jesse and in GX, right?
right,
How you remember at the end of the show how they were the only two people, and Fubuki and like Fujiwara in season 4, how they were like the only ones who didn't get pulled by darkness because they already fixed their darkness in the other season, right?
right, 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 right.
Yeah, that's exactly why though. That's exactly why, because when Jaden was battling darkness, basically they're when they tap into the dark space, which is like tying into the ethers and shit like. But
and
yeah,
and it makes sense because it also goes into triggers in essence, and basically, whenever we not fully done with our shadow work, we still kind of triggered easily in that area, so meaning that somebody could kind of, still kind of have some type of control over you, or, again, at least make you react in a certain type of way. by constantly bringing up that trigger. So
That's what
hence the importance of doing the shadow work.
because you can't even. That's what I'm saying. That's what the dark energy is about because you literally can't get put into that situation if you do the work, which is not the easiest thing all the time to consistently be at that state.
Right.
But yeah, that's really kind of like a big part about Yu-Gi-Oh, especially the machines and like the printing the cards and all that shit too. Um, because basically one group of people need like cards essentially to tap into energies, which is to create a portal or a hole. Meanwhile, when you saw like Jaden and like Yu-Gi, they were just summoning monsters without without even decks and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? So
Right, like Sean. Right, right, like that.
that's
The
so weird.
subtlety, the nuance
Yeah,
of like. They'll continue, bro.
that's what I'm saying. They're doing two entirely different things because what people aren't realizing is it's just so confused. It's a lot to unpack. I don't really want to go on a whole tangent about that. It's a lot to unpack, but anyways, Cool World would be a good movie for people to see because that's like or Son of the Mask. Those ones break it down real well, like in a comic level because this even goes into like Alexander McQueen a lot of like with his story and like apparently he committed suicide essentially like and if you look at a lot of the drawings he was making in his book when you know McQueen like with the skull bandana and all that right um it's
Alexander
like
McQueen. That's one of that's like a rock and roll person or something like that, huh?
a fashion designer but he makes rock maybe does rock and roll too about that but yeah he's got like his symbol's got like the bandana with the skull on it which is like pretty much I don't think it has crossbones but it's similar to skull and
Got
crossbones but anyways if you look at a lot of his like drawings and stuff in his book before he committed suicide which is similar to like a lot of the drawings H.P. Lovecraft had and stuff like that this is them tying into that realm I'm talking about but the shadow energy that double energy that SU energy when you don't like when it overloads you it creates a portal through you and then it goes to other people and other shit to feed on right but that's again that's not the Eshu energy though that's like a worm that's like a worm but not like dragon type of worm this is like a
again, that's kind of going back to like the whole Judas thing and it being like like a duplicate or like a copy or trying to mimic, the issue energy is what you're saying.
yeah it's basically taking advantage of that so when I was talking about Christ and like on the cross and like Judas taking over and all that shit that was essentially when they tried to take over the Eshu energy
Gotcha, gotcha. All right.
yeah so like long story short like Godzilla you know Mecha Godzilla like if a person if you can make people hate your own shit and just not even understand what it is before you have an emotional response to it, then like at the end of the day, then who's to say that they can't take another where the way people look at like certain energies, they would look at like for example how people look at Egypt in a up like in a
Right.
good manner for the most part. Who's to say that in the future it could go to a progression where people would look at that like how they kind of look at Jesus now. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like not our shit, not and I don't really want to use the word Jesus. I'm just talking about the origin of a lot of these things. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? But that's why like when I like reverse a lot of that shit, I just be getting information out of it. It's not like I'm Christian or religious or anything, but I just be finding out the origin of that to have full knowledge of that, so I can actually because as soon as you open the book, like it's a spell. You know what I'm saying? So like even if you close the book and never look at that shit again, there's spells and shit attached to that. So you got to be able to get that shit off a person, so you actually close the.
See, I'm not a big
The way
I was kind of in, kind of doing some of my research through the Bible at a certain point, but I haven't dabbled in it in a minute, you know what I'm saying? But
like I haven't read it in years and years. Don't get me wrong, but I just still like I just remember a lot of shit, right? But like I haven't read it in years and years, trust. But like the thing is the way language originally came was language was developed. It wasn't learned. It was developed. So you're never supposed to learn language from a person. You're supposed to develop language. You know what I'm saying? And that's part of developing your imagination. So like that is
mm,
a huge part of why like most people like with English and when they talk about Babel and the SU that's the fake SU energy.
matter of fact, as you bring up babble and confusion with the words, that's also the story in the mythology with the Chitari people that Credo Mutwa brought up. And again, like how these quote unquote reptilian beings gave language, to the basically after splitting the androgynous energy into a separate male and female, also giving them like, language to even add to the confusion. And again, there's also like little stories or connections in Australia with the Aboriginal people, and the women and men actually having different languages or whatever at a certain point. But yeah, like again, like it adds to confusion. And what came to mind too is like I remember, I don't know why I brought it up a while back. I guess like showing how things are created, or like what comes first and what comes after. But like in so many ways, speaking on how the water element or memory, helps for the creation of words, because it's like people wouldn't be able to speak a language if they couldn't even have memory to memorize words in the first place. So memory had to come before a language came into existence. So which kind of shows how like water, yeah. So in so many ways, showing how water in essence was present before quote unquote air to some extent, because
Yeah.
words,
Let me ask you this: how was water created? The original form of water.
the original form of water, as far as like
Yeah,
you talking about like in this realm or some
as a physics,
H2O type of.
on the highest realm possible. How did water get created? The original water, because if because let me just ask you that to start.
I as far as let's see, I don't have anything. My whole thing, if I bring up like primordial energy, I usually use the terminology no thing. I never necessarily use the terminology water. So like I don't necessarily like.
Okay, okay. So when you're what I'm saying is when you're saying water in that sense, water like is like a fluid that transmits the memory through. You know what I'm saying? So the memory is coming from something, but the water is like flowing it through. You know what I'm saying? It's creating a path.
I get what you're saying. It's like the medium for the memory and not necessarily the memory itself in
Before you get
essence.
the river, you have to have the trench dug out. For
Right, right. I get what you're saying. Like again, the memory is not necessarily water itself, but water is the thing that kind of.
yeah. Memory is not held in water. Memory is held in stone. That's why all the Yu-Gi-Oh cards have stone tablets. See, water is produced out of rocks. That's why in the Bible it says Aaron didn't make it into the promised land because he hit the rock with his staff and it made water come out. Because he created a hole to let the water come out, but he didn't let the water come out without creating a hole because rocks, stones create water. Point blank period. That's why your bones produce blood. The stones produce water. So no, the memory doesn't come from the water. The memory is actually held in stone. So said let's to try to make it acidic so that it burns through the stones, which is called the Pacific Rim, which they say monsters and other shit is on the other side of that, which is going into the soul realms. Which when you go into the show Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, they have a war between the astral realm and the Barian world. And I have a video on my channel called elemental ability or my abilities part two video, where I
Uh
talk
huh.
about the elements of the. I think you've seen it, but it says abyss versus astral world. But the abyss world, another name for it is Barian world. Now Barian is dealing with like the Bari and like that's dealing with like for example like the Hassa people, like if they like if people would say like like the Orisha things like that, they would call their spirit like they would call them the world demons and all that shit, which is not.
Hmm.
But yeah, the memory is held underneath the stone where basically there's thrones and like because people think the pyramid is on the top of the planet. It's no, the shit on the core of the planet is way bigger than um, you know what I'm saying? So water is considered dead unless it has minerals inside of it because it leaches off of the because water if you watch like a beach or like one of those shores that have just like stone like a stone um a stone like riverside, you'll see over time if you do a time lapse the water actually breaks down the stone and it becomes more air. Like if you're in a pool all day and then your fingers look all wrinkly and shit because it strips oil out of you. And oil literally means life. So water actually means death.
All right, and as you bring that up, my little connection to it more so in connection with the etymology of like Hebrew letters and it being connected to the subconscious and memory through that perspective. But I the stone thing that's new for me. I wouldn't
Uh, I'm fully with you. That's called mem or the Maya, right? The mem or the Maya, but that's tied in with the shadow aspect of things. But that's not the darkness. The darkness is within. You got to go with. You're talking about organite energy and the chakras and the organs. The organs get produced by your blood, and then so when you go into your bones, which your sound, the way we hear sound is through
right.
your bones, right? So sound is the fourth dimension. Blood is an illusion, still, because you produce blood from your bones. So sound is the fourth dimension. So when you're in your bone marrow and you're able to take in sunlight as a breatharian and produce blood because your bones are able to produce minerals, right?
Uh-huh.
Then what happens is you become electric because the way water becomes alive is there's minerals in it. So that's the difference with us. Like I said, we produce metals and minerals. So
Got
the living aspect is coming through the photons. Like I said, we're photovoltaic. It's transmitted through the voltage gradient and it becomes minerals, which in the bottom of the ocean the steam pockets, the volcano and like the water, it creates these steam pockets which produce heavy metals. Not heavy metals, but it produces metals that like which goes into like volcanoes and all that type of shit too. But like I to summarize it, I just call it water energy because a lot of people don't know either.
I was just about to
Um,
say
but when you get past, yeah,
because I again speaking from that perspective is more so like I use the terminology when primordial, the no thing aspect, like a being nothingness, or I guess in essence, like and not necessarily ether, but you know what I'm saying. But again, like I never attach it to I never attach it to
this
water
is where we
though
get both.
per se, you know. But
So most people don't know this. The earth element came first. Earth came before water, air, and fire. Long story short, on this side of things, because we're on Earth, it's the first thing here, obviously.
all right, that's a new one for me. I have to meditate on that one. I always felt like from my meditations, it was kind of like the void energy, or like a
Yeah, that's what I was
again
trying to
like
get.
a dark
Yeah,
like a darkness energy,
there's the
and then
abyss and
things being well.
the.
Wait,
Do
hold.
you hear me there?
Not now I could hear you.
I was saying that's the thing too, though. People get confused on that too, because you got to read it backwards and forwards. Like I was saying, one side takes you to the abyss, and one side takes you to the void. The void is the number zero. The abyss is something else.
Got you. Got
Yeah.
you.
So the void takes you like you're tapping into that void, like that's proper. But like the abyss is something else. That ties into the infernal state, which is your blood boiling. You get what I'm saying? Where it's like instead of like when your energy raises and then you go past the blood into the bone, it'd be like your energy starts boiling in your blood and it
The
turns on that capitalistic sense.
that makes how blood benders and most when uh temperament to
Yeah. But the blood
say that again.
blood bending was iron bending though. They were just bending the iron in the blood.
Well, put it like this: from
I'm trying to tell you. But that's what
of
I'm trying to
like
say. Like, if you went it backwards though, blood bending came first and then they developed water bending after that. And if you get connected to Naruto with Gara, his son Shiki, where he's able to use the metal bending, like the iron bending, where he's able to create iron sand and all that, this is the ability to
uh huh.
produce blood And then once you're able to produce blood, you have full control over water. So this is what's called the water
I
dragon.
I can't.
This is what's called the water dragon. It's the ability to control water entirely. Like, you know, if you've seen like a fictional shit, like standing in front of a river and like a water dragon like stands, right?
Hmm.
That would be the ability to control water, like on the right level with water bending. Now, the other type of water bending, if you do it the other way, like you notice how they started in the Ice Nation with it?
Right, right, right.
Yeah, because they had to do it through a cold process. But the other process is through heat. Because, like I said, iron is in a high heat state. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha, gotcha.
And quantum computers operate at an absolute zero temperature, at a cold state. So what they are doing is like that's what I'm saying. That came after. And funny enough, you know how Aang he had to give up the seven chakra. He had to let
Wait, say that again. When who
I
what?
remember that. When Aang was opening the Avatar state, and he had to let go of love. He had to let go of Korra in the seven when he was reaching the seventh
Right,
chakra.
right. I'm more so upset
I
of
just thought,
attachment, but
yeah, yeah. But I just thought it was funny how they're like, no, let go of love right away, and then the other people are saying love is the answer. I was like, what? I was like, how come you saying let go of that shit?
right, right, right. I feel like, and again, people definition of love, but I felt like it was more so like, hey, don't be attached to, Korra. I mean, not Korra. I'm thinking about the whole other Avatar. I forgot what's her name.
A Buddhist monk talking to someone who had trouble with letting go of that state where the seventh chakra, and he was basically saying if a person's child died, like on the other side of the world, how would you feel about that? And he was like, I don't know, it's bad, but I wouldn't really like personally care. And then basically he was saying, okay, what if your child died? And then he was like, well, I'd be miserable. And he'd be like, he's like, well, that's what he means by that monk. It was saying that's what unconditional love is. You should have the same type of emotion for the person on the other side of the world also here. And he didn't mean that you should have the same feeling of hurt for both. It means that type of unattachment you had to the person on the other side of the world. He was saying that you should have that same unattachment
Right. Yeah,
it was a crazy quote. It was a crazy.
I feel like
It doesn't mean you don't protect people. You know
oh
what I mean? But it doesn't mean you don't protect people and all that type of stuff, but it was just saying that if you care too much about other people, like with love, on the spiritual shit, you're just gonna get manipulated and you're gonna be vulnerable. It's just gonna be too easy. You know what I'm saying?
I always use a simple analogy, inner then outer, you know what I'm saying? Love and compassion for yourself will automatically just like your actions will just be in the form of compassion and love without you having to over exude it, you know what I'm saying? Like just, love yourself, you know what I'm saying? Practice self-love cuz again, for the most part, you help the world by being a healed version of yourself, and being a healed version of yourself takes that self-work or that self-care, and then just naturally you're going to be kind of like generous, or you know what I'm saying, like, and that doesn't make you easy manipulative just because you're generous. And I get what you're saying. It's like it it's preached in certain areas though to like, oh, you got like almost like a martyr type of love, or again either obsessive or martyr, like, oh, you gotta overly give or you gotta save everybody else, almost like without taking care of yourself type of, you know.
And that's what I meant by the two types of water bending. Like the way you described it, that's what I mean by like the water dragon type of thing, where it's just flowing and it is what it is. But the other energy is like, yeah, when you're forcing it, and that's dealing with ice. Because when it's on that ice level, you have to force it. But with the blood, and when it gets on that heat level, like it's electric, so it already is flowing. It's already going down a path. But with the cold level, like you have to put your own energy into it to heat up the water to make it go through a certain path. You know what I'm saying?
I kind of get what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like
I,
yeah. So I'm saying like if you learn it, if you see it from both ways, and then you can do it from the point of like if you were to go and just Google how to make it, and you know what I'm saying, and lose that. Um, the first state you would start at is like I don't know. I can go into that another time, but that I don't know. That's just what I was trying to get at though. Like just want to clear up because I feel like not many people talk about that. The memory is held in the stone. That's the only thing that actually. That's the reason why matter exists to hold, like you know what I'm saying, to hold memory in it. That's why it's matter. So it's holding, but matter isn't just like a rock. Like usually every type of matter forms itself into different types of shapes and stuff like that. You know, so
Nah,
it's
I
not like that. Yeah.
I could see that as well. You know, especially from the perspective of like when you brought up like telling the story and different, you know, from front to back, and you know, like kind of having a different perspective. Uh,
Well, yeah, I should say like under the stone is where the memory is. It's not really in the stone, it's like under it, but it's kind of in it as well. So there's a reason why those obelisks in Ethiopia have those triple doors, but like it's not a door that you can open. So they say you have to like walk through it. Or like the pyramid didn't have like the great pyramid, the biggest, that big ass pyramid, didn't have any doors on it. They had to blow a hole in it to get in, right?
all
So
right, yeah.
why don't they have doors on it? Are you just not supposed to go in it? Like I know people say they're underwater and all this stuff too, but yeah, that goes into
Nah, bro,
that goes into
you
the
gave me something to, you know what I'm saying? That's a little meditation I'm gonna tap in with, you know what I'm saying? Cause I'm not one to claim I know something that I'm not, you know, familiar with, you know. And when I hear certain stuff, I'm not also gonna be like on some debating vibes. I like just hear it out and just like, all right, I'll kind of take it in, you know, take it in from your perspective as far as like listening to it, and I have to tap into that on my own time, you know. But it, you know,
most
I
of the
could
time when
see.
I think I don't expect people to I think like when I talk to people I'm just like I'll do it in a way where like stuff that I'm hitting on it will just like so I just hit on certain key, not be relevant now but it's relevant at a
Right,
different
right.
time. That's why sometimes it's
Cause
just like
no,
yeah,
I
yeah.
understand. I understand your energy, bro. Like you be just from understanding like some of my videos or even my little human aspects is kind of wondering like, damn, bro, you seem like you out there, and it's not really. It's just like, you know, you kind of tapping in to, you know, things that in essence, again, like thinking of
Well,
like
yeah,
our
those are
our consciousness being like software, you know, in essence, is like, you know, some things just a little before it's time, for lack of a better word, you know what I'm saying? You know.
when that stuff happens, I'm like, man, why was my consciousness in a place like this already? So I'm like trying to pull it back, and while I'm trying to pull it back, there usually be shit trying to hold on to that shit. So I reverse engineer whatever it is, and I just decode what it is. And usually after I decode it, whatever that is, a lot of times lets it go because that's how shadow energy works. Like a shadow is literally created by the reflection of the sun, right? So
Right.
the sun gets rid of it, but darkness doesn't exist with the sun.
Right. Yeah, the sun doesn't create. Yeah, yeah, right, right.
Yeah, but the sun comes out of the dark.
Right. Again, just as above, so below, as within, so without, you know, the
Yeah,
little spark of our the bodysuit comes from out of the darkness of our mother womb, you know, so that
that's what I'm saying. So I mean, a lot of these things, if you run it backwards, like the story is entirely different because like those tunes and cartoons is dealing with fairy tales, and what the fairy tale, well that and not really fairy tale like the anime fairy tale, like that's a little bit
right,
different, but
right.
the way that people are using this fairy tale energy, like in the like that's why like when you see Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter and all that type of shit, and you don't see any black people in there, and it'd be like a system where it's like a way to try to write themselves as like try to take that identity. So it's just like, but the way they write it, they have to write it backwards so that like if you watch that shit, you think that your own energy is evil. So it's not really necessarily about what other people are doing here. It's just to understand what your energy is.
Right.
It's difficult when if you're taking on like a face value. You know what I'm saying?
Nah, again, brother, that's something, you know, I feel like, you know, that reminds me of my whole little chiming in on the whole thing of like gods of Egypt a while back, you know what I'm saying? It's like, you know, but I I've gotten to the space where I do my best like now to kind of just let it go in the sense of like, bro, I done spoke on it enough. I'm not like, so, in most cases for me, like it's just how I'm wired. So I'm not saying this is right or wrong for everybody. You know, it's just like that energy of like, I feel like I'm doing a better job if I don't like I speak on it, but then now it's time to just focus on whatever, you know, and not saying that you're not doing this, you know,
Yeah,
to focus on the solution or like put my energy towards something else, you know. And I guess that comes from me as a soul choosing to be born in Louisiana, where if I spent most of my time worried about like, oh man, they doing this and doing that, like I wouldn't be doing what I need to do if I was like, you know, being out here, you know what I'm saying? It's like it's always floating in the air. You would have
yep.
to, you know, like you literally would have to move to not be thinking about it all the time, you know what I'm saying? Because you know, it's evident
Like
everywhere.
the reverse of the. But like I said, it's trying to reverse the shit. Like it's trying to reverse shit to like do shadow work. It's like another form of shadow work because it's a lot of shit. Like a lot of this stuff is like it's a lot. So like reversing it is. But no, I agree with you on that though. But on a solution level, the part that like when you're focusing on the future, it's just important to understand this for like vulnerable. So like technology that basically because like I had this problem. I didn't focus on any like I didn't have any problems with any other people. I didn't even care about rate any of that type of shit. But then when my actual like technology and businesses and things I was creating was starting getting stolen, like after I created it by Europeans, literally, like I can't even say it any other way. I was like,
Right,
damn, how
right.
the hell are they? I was like, how the hell do they do that shit? Like right after they offered me a deal on certain shit, and I said no, and then they started stealing my shit. I was like,
Wait,
what
hold
the
on.
fuck?
Run that right after they offer you a deal, like, cause it's kind of fading out on my end. Gotta hear that fully.
Oh wait,
Run it.
my, my phone might die, so it's just a quick warning. But yeah,
All
right
right.
after they offered me help and like basically they're like, all right, and it gave me actually some good advice on it. That's when I started getting attacked by these people, and I had no clue what any of this shit is. So I got pulled into that. Like I was in that mentality where I was like you know what I'm saying? Where I was like, yo, I don't really care about their, but they cared about that shit, and then forced me to care about that shit too.
No,
So
I.
that's where I got, you know what I'm saying? That's where I got pulled in. But the now I'm realizing what they do with organ harvesting and all that is when they off people, they turn you into technology that they sell over a 20 and 30-year process. You get what I'm saying? So
Right,
like
right.
when you're supposed to into something, they create technology out of it, and like I'm looking at it like, damn, well you have to protect your shit without a patent.
All right. Yeah, we'll close it out. Is there anything that you needed to bring it full circle, and of course, you know, let everybody know, you know, uh information and all that, but the floor is yours. Or did it go out? Probably did. All right. We'll commence. Much love to everybody in the chat. Yeah, his phone must have went out. Yep, yep. But much love to everybody in the chat. You know, of course, you know, for the little algorithms, thumbs up, sharing the video. You know, I trust that the gems that the brethren shared, you know what I'm saying, connects, especially the whole thing with watching movies backwards, you know what I'm saying? Like that was a new one for me, you know, so definitely gonna tap into that theory. You know, yep, Mr. West. But, you know, and again, Bridge of Ra, his his channel, his YouTube channel is called Bridge of Ra. Again, it's in the title, spelled exactly how it is. If you want to check out any of his videos and content, and bro, definitely be going in on like the anime movies and just all kind of like he be going in, man. Definitely appreciate his knowledge and awareness, you know, because in a lot of cases, we definitely be spitting some stuff that's, you know, like again, a part of the profit or being a prophet is you bringing certain things, not too far in the future, like we said, not too far in the past, not too far in the future, but part of being a prophet is like bringing in things that you know uh it might be a little bit before most are ready for, but in essence, that's how you again like profit, you know, in essence, like you profit from it. It may not be like actual funds or fiat currency, but like you profit energetically from knowing certain things that's, coming into our now moment, you know what I'm saying? So again, definitely appreciate, you know, his presence and the knowledge, being shared. Uh Again, all of his information will be through his channel, Bridge of Ra, and that's also his Instagram handle, so definitely tap in with bro. Y'all already know what it is, man. Any and all donations greatly appreciated. I have one spot left, unless I check my phone. Matter of fact, I posted because somebody may have sent me a message to get that last spot. We'll see as far as the astrology readings. And yeah, any and all donations greatly appreciated, but y'all know what it is. Now it's the vibrate. Y'all enjoy the rest of y'all night. Peace. Oh, wait. The X.